All right. And welcome to another day in the Milky Way, everybody. Yeah. You're watching me. I was running a little late. I was like, oh my gosh, I got to put the headphones on. I'm still waiting for Scotty Roberts. Sorry, everybody. We're getting straight away here. I was waiting a little bit long, but nothing's happening. So we're just being patient. Tonight, we're going to talk about the secret history of the Reptilians. And hopefully Scotty Roberts will be joining us soon. I'm just trying to get this going again. Everything is fine. Don't you worry. Yes. Anyway, I hope everybody is doing fine today and had a good week. So we're just doing what we can. So far, everything is good here. I hope you all went there and got your cards set up for, oh geez, why is this computer doing what it's doing? Got your cards for Al, and he's, I did not mean to hit that button. There's too many buttons going on here. Anyway, sorry, I'm trying to drive the bus and do the other things, and always something. And that's the way it goes when you're in my life. But anyhow, anyway, needless to say, we're doing our thing. I'm trying to read everything. Hello, Michelle Can-Am Free, Teresa D'Anton, Zigzag Zilla, David Castle, Deborah Truax, Crumpy Stack. Everybody's coming in. Susie Q, Brenda, Milky's mom's in the house. There, that's better. My thing wasn't set up right. Grandpa Brian, guess what I got? I got my new Reiki book. Just like that. And so we got some good stuff going on there. Zigzag Zilla, oh man. And we got Gaza, who's in the house. Look what I found on the shelf at the store today. Successful gardening on the Northern Prairie. So I thought that was really interesting, and I had to pick that book up. We're going to do some gardening here pretty soon. It is spring. It is coming spring, so everybody get your gardening stuff out, get you going. Let's see. Oh, shoot. That's what I was going to do. Anyway, David Castle or Lucky Stone, I sent you an email. I'm getting anyway, yeah, it's one of those days, and I'm doing my thing. And I'm waiting. I know. Sorry, people, be patient with me. Delaney Pearl Jones is in the house. And who else do we got? No Big Al. He must be driving the truck today. I know he was off in no man's land, coming across Oklahoma or something like that. So you gotta send Walking Waters in the house. There you go. I'm just going back through all the stuff from earlier today. Pamela Jean. Yes. Strange things happening in your neck of the woods, huh? Max Vision's in the house. Now remember, go over to Max's channel right after this and check him out. He's going to have another great show on after this. It's great to get your mind working, especially when you're doing all this stuff like that. Your mind has to be focused. Focus, because if you got 3 or 4 things going on. Audrey's in the house. Hello, beautiful humans. Yes, that's right. We are all human, or some version of it anyway. At least for the most part. Maybe in this neck of the woods we are. And what else do we got? Oh, who else do we got? We got Regine Hutchinson, volume going in and out. Okay. I know. I'm going to plug in this thing a little bit better. I got too many wires here. If you could see, if you've seen the process of all the wires here in a pile, you would probably say, I can't even believe it works. Yes. Can you hear me now? Okay. I do have a speaker or a microphone. Suzanne Sashi's in the house. Yes, Elderberry. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. Especially all you people that are up in Canada. I'm sending you favor, and I hope you get through everything okay. Still waiting for Scotty Roberts. Maybe we'll have somebody else drop in to help carry on the conversation for a little bit. That's all right, David Castle. Don't you worry about it. Don't you worry. Anyway, Grumpy Stack, I hope you're doing good. Remember, is your business still open? And we were worried about that. You know, you said Sunday, and well, and now it's Saturday, a week later. I hope you're still in business and everything is good. I was thinking about you all week, and you know, putting in some hard work and stuff like that. It's what you got to do when you want things to work out. And sometimes even if you put in the hardest work, it's just the way the world works, you know. Anyway, let's see who else. Boy, we got people piling in. I just hope Scotty Roberts shows up. He'll be here. Abnormal Realities with Ron Sushi. Yeah. Well, anyway, there you go. Rocky Stushi's in the house. Anyway, we're gonna get on with this book. I got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about. We're waiting for somebody to pop in just in case my computer crashes, which may happen because I live in North Dakota and it's windy, it's bad weather, and we're lucky we got electricity, more or less internet. But today we're gonna go over this book, Secret History of the Reptilians. It started out for way back in the day, and Scotty Roberts did a good job on writing this book. He covered so many topics and so many subjects on here that you know, yeah. He says, "It's late. What a shocker." Yes, what a shocker. Not a problem. I'll cut him a little slack since this is his first time. Cannoli. If I had your email address, Rocky, I'd send you and you could come on. We could make fun of them together. Anyway, if you want to send me an email, I got the thing up. I'll watch my email box. Just send me an email. I'll send you one back with a link, and we'll have a little fun with it. Anyhow, it doesn't matter. It's all good. It's all good, people. It's all good. And so anyway, we're just going to go through the stuff. So I have a PowerPoint presentation with lots of information and pictures, because guess what? You people like pictures. I got a feeling that, let's see, where is my PowerPoint? Oh, here it is. And, oh, you don't want to see all this stuff. Oh, hang on a second. Hang on a second. I got to get the thing here, slideshow. Yeah, now I can do it. Play. Oh, yeah. Set up slideshow. There we go. Now I can hit share, and then I can hit slideshow. And now you guys can see the slideshow. And now I should say play slideshow from beginning. And there we go. Welcome, everybody. Look at this. I hope you're seeing it on the right screen. And I don't know if you are. You should be seeing it on this big screen. But I'm going to look it up. This is the Secret History of the Reptilians. And I did this all myself this afternoon. I put a lot of work into all these things. If you haven't noticed, I do that a lot. Crazy me, right? So that's what I kind of do. I put a lot of work in this stuff so you people can enjoy it. And we're going to start out here as soon as oh, yeah. I can do this. Yes, it's coming in. I double checked, and I got to turn the volume off so that don't interrupt me. Here we go. In the beginning, there was Adam and Eve. And what was with Adam and Eve? We had the serpent, the snake. The question is was it a reptilian? Was it, it was a reptile. They're referring to another species. Regardless of what it is, it's another species. But this carries on. Was the serpent, which a giver of knowledge because he was on the tree of knowledge? Was he a trickster, as in like the Indian legends where they got the trickster who's the raven or the coyote? There's always another entity there, and that entity is giving or tricking us humans, because you know what, in all reality, we're not that smart. Yeah, well, maybe we are smart, but we fall for things really easy. I mean, how many times have you gone out and purchased something that you really didn't want, or you knew you shouldn't buy and you bought it anyway? And again, here's another depiction. You got Adam and Eve. Yeah, don't look at the nudity thing or what they might be doing. I know that's kind of bad, but this is the only picture I could find where they had, see how the snake or the serpent, see the person in the tree, that's the serpent, and he's wrapped up like a snake. So, because if you were Adam and Eve, wouldn't you not like look at the other entity as, hey, you're different than I am. You are not of the same. Yes, desert rose, one apple. Yeah, anyway, hey, there's Lucky Stones in the house. Thank you for coming. He's my backup just in case the computer goes down or something happens. You guys are all sitting in the dark. So we got Adam and Eve. And Adam and Eve progress into we're just going with the Bible stuff because this was easy to find pictures on, and you guys like it. So then you got the part where you got Moses, who put the snake on the stick because the people were that was one of the stories, and they were always putting a snake or a serpent on a stick for some odd godly reason. I don't know, but why is it always a serpent or a snake? It's always that way. Even in these depictions, this guy here was drawing a picture, and in the top, I assume that old guy with his hand swinging down would be God. And you got the two angels, which is his messengers who hold up heaven. And then you got us poor people who are bowing and kneeling underneath him. Yeah, that's right where we should be, right? Ha! And then underneath that, you have the earth. And inside the earth, what do you got? You got beasts and you got serpents in there. Dragons and serpents sleeping inside the earth. What better else could you expect? And this is what, and of course, now is these the reptilians people see? Have you seen one in your bedroom sneaking up on you? Probably not. But are these people, have these reptilians been here longer than we have? Have they been, do they look like this? Are they part of our society? How many people have heard of shapeshifters? Yeah, Zigzagzilla says, the staff is your spine. The medical field has sigil called the calculus, or whatever it is. Yeah, tongue tied.
Caduceus.
But yeah, that's it. The caduceus. Thank you. See, I knew I need backup because I am really bad at pronouncing words. And we also have the Aztecs and Quetzalcoatl And of course, again, the feathered guy, and you got the serpent here. And what's he doing? They are feeding people to the serpent. They got snakes all around, and they got, it's always, why are you people so afraid of a serpent, a snake? There shouldn't be a reason to be afraid of a snake. I mean, you just take an axe, chop its head off. I mean, that shouldn't be that way. And again, here we go. I'm going to stop right there because guess what? We got Scotty coming in the house, and we're going to chit chat with him for a little bit and get this ball rolling again. As soon as I can figure out how to get back to where I needed to go. Yeah. Don't worry. Teresa, thank you, Teresa. Thank you. There he is. There's the man.
Whoa.
There's the man, the myth, the legend, the original Indiana Jones, who actually goes out there and finds information with his bare hands.
If he doesn't fall asleep. Boy, I apologize for that. I know you're not supposed to apologize on radio. You just go with it. You go, oh, that's showbiz. But man, we were running all day, and I was tired to begin with. We had a big scout dinner today for my kids. And I'm sitting kind of in the wings, watching everything going on. And I'm falling asleep this afternoon. I'm like, man, I am tired. When we got home, I think about 5 o'clock, I laid down. And I said, if I fall asleep, I fall asleep. And then my wife had to run some errands. She is out with her mom. And so all I got is kids. Nobody woke me up to say, hey, Dad, do you remember you have a radio show tonight? So my apologies to you, to your audience, your other guests, that if I held you up.
Oh, that's no problem.
So if I look like I've been sleeping, it's because as of 4 minutes ago, I was. Teresa D'Antone called me.
Thank goodness. Thank you, Teresa.
Saw the phone ring, and it hit my head immediately. I didn't even realize it was as late as it is. So there you go.
I accept your apology. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. We already went through the part of the book, and I was telling everybody all the good things, but so I'm going to skip over a lot of that stuff because, because we already talked about, I introduced everybody that came in. There's a little more people coming in. We got a big full house tonight. We got Mary Wynn's in the house, and we got who makes the day. There you go. And we got all kinds of people coming in. And anyway, so there's, and Lucky Stone is our co-host tonight. Since you weren't here, I was like, oh my God, I got to have a co-host. Where's my co-host?
I always, whenever I see his name, I always go, it's Lucky Stone.
Yes.
So I don't want to say magically delicious. That would be probably a bad connotation, but good to see you too.
Good seeing you. Yeah. Good time face to face.
Yes. So to speak. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, close enough. The COVID times, this is face to face.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So we were going through the book, and I put together a small. I got the book, and as you can see, I have tons of markers. I read through this was a great book because, I love this subject because I have so many questions about this subject, and yet nobody ever wants to talk about it. They're like, no, there was Adam and Eve, there was a serpent in a tree, there was that, there was this. Leave it, and that's it. There's dragons and things, and they killed them all off with King Arthur's sword, and we're done.
Right.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. And nobody wants to say anything. Yes,
I do.
But here we go, and I'm going to start the screen share all over again, and we're going to. Oh, I hope that's the right one. Yeah. Yes, I have it. The right.
Wow, look at you. You have prepared something.
Yes, I prepared something. So we're going to these are just pictures because I thought I could do it the other way. And this was way better to do it this way and have some pictures. And then we could talk about this stuff because I lined them up kind of with the book, and you start out talking about and in the beginning, and you were a Bible scholar. I mean, in my book, you went to college for it. It says it all on your book
right.
there.
Yeah, I went to Bible college, and I was in seminary, and went into the ministry, and didn't end up pursuing that path vocationally, but it's stuff that has stuck with me for the years. So
absolutely, it's a good way to start. And you get a lot. I mean, most of us, especially people in the chat room and people who listen, they started out going to some church somewhere and getting indoctrinated, and we all get that way. But then when you start digging up the truth and you really read the words, and then it hits you, and you say, oh, this is all kind of messed up.
And I almost hate to say this, and it's something that bothers me at times when I think about it, is that how would I describe this best? I would think to somebody here, let's put it into a situation like this. When I find myself in situations where I'm talking with somebody who is really promoting biblical lifestyle, fundamentalism, conservative fundamentalism, all of that, I bristle. And I am like, no, there's something about that that's not right anymore. There's something you're missing. But the other side of the coin is when I run into somebody's, that Bible, it's all a bunch of fables and it's all fake. And so I bristle as well, because I say, look, no, it's not all fake. It is not all. I think what has happened is we have interpreted and created religion. The religion we have now with Christianity is different than the religion Christianity was when it was at its inception. It's very different now. And so I find more and more I seem to run into things, and God, you almost hate to say this, because you don't know for sure. None of us knows for sure, but it seems like all the things that I learned about Christianity, all the concepts, the theologies, the precepts, the rules, the regulations, and all of this are no different than any other religion that's out there. There's just different focal points, different gods, different names, and things like that. And so that's what, maybe even more so now than when I wrote The Secret History of the Reptilians. I mean, I wrote that book in 2013, something like that. And so maybe even 2012. And so it might be 10 years. And so I have gone through a lot of changes theologically since then, but I still find there is that, what even the Bible refers to as that still small voice. It's that whispering that's there that says, hey, it's not, don't throw it all away. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. There's something here. You might be on a path here, but anyway, there's many different things that have sent me down that path, and I could just babble on forever about that, trying to establish the case that I have for it. But everything from, and I will say this too. There is that thing that we were taught in seminary, in Bible college, in church. It's Satan, Satan and his minions and his cohort, and all that he has are going to be there to try to deceive you. And so all these things, there are days, even now, I'll sit here and I'll be listening to something, or I'll be writing something, or I'll be thinking about something, and I say, what if everything I was taught in seminary and church was true? And I just had a Jedi walk through my studio. How about that? I bet you all can't say that. A very tall 12-year-old son. I don't know if you can see my camera with your this is commonplace on my show, so yeah. I'm just gonna make it on your show too. There's my son right there. Come over here, Flynn. Get in the camera. Can you see him?
Not until I stop the share here. Okay,
Oh,
there we go.
sorry.
There we go.
There you go. So I have a Jedi. He's got a friend over and they're doing stuff. And he came in before Teresa called me. He said, "Hey, Dad, can I use your lightsaber?" And I'm like, "Sure, son." And that's right about the time Teresa called. Now he just walked through and he's got his Obi-Wan outfit on. So there you go. That's probably not kosher to do when you're on somebody else's show, but
that's all right.
I don't care.
We're a good family channel. We go with the flow, and it works out every time. I mean, we're here. We support everybody, and it's nice when you can do it and be with the family and bring them in, and just like normally, like normal things. And that's awesome. I mean, sometimes I bring my dog and she'll probably come sit on my lap sometime or something other. And Lucky, he's got his cat that shows up every now and then.
There you go.
And that's all good. We just go with the things. And like it says, it's the way it is, but it's wonderful. Now, thank you for coming.
It is.
And this is you're right about all those things. See, these are the things I always argue in my part, because there are diamonds in the rough. It's like, why do you read the Bible? Because there's stuff in there. And you can't just in there. You just can't just throw it out. But yet I say to myself, I got to study other things, because this literally, the Bible is contained in a small area of the earth that is really in a geographical sense very small compared to the rest. Well, then where were the angels in South America, North America, and China, or Australia? Where was Satan in all those other countries too? Why didn't he show up there? Why where was
and
he?
Now these are all questions I've always had. They're things that when I was in my fundamental seminary days and Bible days, that we talked about all these things, not in the same tones that we use now, but it was well, what happens to somebody who dies and never ever even had a chance to hear about the Bible and Jesus Christ? Well, they go to a cooler place of hell. And it's like, well, why would they be sent to hell by an omnipotent, all-loving, all-caring creator, or is it Q? Those are the things that you say. Well, the inventors of Q, science fiction, Star Trek. That's an amalgamated fictional outpouring in a very simplistic terms of something that somebody had questions about theologically. That's damn true. And because they say, who was God? Oh, by the way, if I can mention, were you ever a Star Trek fan?
Oh, absolutely.
Do you remember the original series? Remember the Squire of Gothos?
Oh,
it's where they show up on this planet, and this guy's dressed like a 16th century squire, and he's got all these magical powers and all of these things, and he makes things happen, and he turns up to be kind of evil. And at the end, you find out it's like he's got parents, that are summoning him back. He's been out to play, and he wasn't supposed to be doing that. And we're sorry, we've let your ship go. And you wonder, was that an early? I know this has nothing to do with what you want to talk about. Just stream of consciousness, but you wonder if the writers of that created Q, I'm wondering if that's supposed to be the same kind of character or the same family of characters or something. And is this what? And that was their science fiction answer to the question, what is God and who is God? Is God one of these types of beings? And it's, get the Q thing out of your head now. This is where the creative mind goes when it creates things like that. It's an outpouring of trying to answer the questions. And that's what I do with my books, even the Secret History of the Reptilians. I write things in there that are kind of stream of consciousness sometimes, like we're talking now, or I'm talking now. And because I want to find answers to things. I I want to pose the questions out there. I want to ask, if God is who God says God is, according to Scripture, then why this? Why that? Why that? Why do these things work this way? If God is the benevolent, loving Father God, which, by the way, wasn't who God was early in the Bible. It follows this whole train of back like 6,000 to 8,000 BC. God was the God. It was the thing, and it was creator God, and then it morphed down to becoming God. Then became a God of the things, of nature, of the God of the mountain, the God of the rain, the God of the storm, the God of the ocean, and then it became the God was embodied in the king. The ruler was one with God. And this changed our concept of who God was. And then after that, as you get closer and closer in millennial segments to what would be 0 AD, as you're coming down in that calendar, Christianity changed that because it latched onto the idea of God is now not so much embodied in the king, and the like 500 to 800 years prior to the birth of Christ, the whole concept was changing again, that God could be a little more personal than that. Even in Jewish writings in the Old Testament, you see this, the intertestamental period. And then finally, after the time of Christ, you see Christ becoming the face piece, the human one of us, who God became one of us, out of us, and the personal God, the daddy God. That's what made me think of that. Is that now when we were talking, I said something about God has become this daddy God. He's the as the New Testament calls it, the Abba Father, the God whose lap you can crawl up into, the God who I remember in church, and this still hits my heart from way back then. It was like, God is, I had an old pastor friend of mine 25 years ago when I was going through some really rough stuff in my marriage with my kids. And I remember he says, Scotty, says, God just craves for you to bring your messes to him. And God is the God of open arms, the God that takes you as you are. Listen to how our psychology has changed God, the concept of God, the attributes of God. And so all of that falls into all these studies I do, Nephilim, reptilians, Moses, in one of the books I wrote. And all of these things are all this big pile of who is God? Is God Q? And that's why I bring that up. Not that I believe that, I'm just using that as an example. That's how one person or a set of people created God to mean something, or trying to explain who he was. And so is God the Abba Father? Is God the God that would command you, his monarch, in his name, to wipe out every town with every man, woman, child, goat, sheep, dog, cat, and make it a sinkhole? Is that the same God who is the God who waits for you with open arms and welcomes it? Well, the explanation we got in fundamental Christianity was, well, that's because God didn't change. It's that he now represents himself through the propitiatory atoning act of his son, who came and sacrificed himself, God in the form of man. It's how it's filtered through Jesus, and everything is now Jesus. I just had somebody, an old friend of mine from my high school days, said something in one of my posts on Facebook, and said something to the effect of, I think I put up something flippantly and said, there is no, I said, how did I put it? I said, where everybody's telling us this is the new normal. And I said, you know what? There is no new normal. There's, we fight against the new normal. We fight against the old normal. And somebody said, well, this is the normal we have until Jesus comes.
Oh.
And I look at, this is an example of what I said earlier, the things that make me bristle a little bit, because I look at that and I go, that's the language I used to use. And that's what I used to live by. When I was a youth pastor, those are the things I taught the kids in my youth group until Jesus comes. And I'm like, do you realize the Apostle Paul wrote those verses and other Peter and so on in the New Testament, knowing that it was going to happen in their lifetime? And that was 2,000 years ago. And I just noticed in your background, Adam has his, as my son would say, his wiener right in Eve's face. And it's like, who painted that?
Oh, yeah. Well, anyway, we got to get on. We gotta, speaking of that, we got to get on with this.
I'm sorry. I got myself on a rabbit trail.
You're right on the rabbit trail. It's just I got pictures for all this rabbit trail, man. We got the history.
Right on.
We got the history of and then here we go with Adam and Eve, and they are with the serpent, right?
Yes.
And this is an old depiction, and just like you said, the tree of knowledge, here's the serpent. Now, how is that even believable? We know what a snake is, but here's another rendition of it. Here's Adam and Eve.
There it is.
But what if the serpent was more like man?
Right.
What if he was more like man? Adam and Eve would be more willing to trust him. Well, because, and then my question to you is if they went to the tree and there was a serpent there and they didn't think nothing of it, and maybe the serpent looked the same as God, because he said that Adam walked with God, and then here's the serpent, and he wasn't afraid of the serpent. Neither was Eve.
Right.
Maybe God is the serpent too.
I look at I had to mention with this picture, you got, Adam's talking to the serpent there, and there's Eve, and he's like, Lucifer, hey Eve, how you doing? Yeah. And so that's how that picture grabs me. But Satan, if you look at the original writings in the book of Genesis where you get this story, you never find the word Satan. You never find the name Lucifer. You never find the devil. Those are all attributions made to the Genesis story. At least 1,000 years later was the first time you see that attribution. And not to interrupt you, but what, as they refer to it, he says the serpent. But if you translate serpent, what does serpent mean in those them languages from thousands of years ago? Right, and
it's a magician, a trickster, a magician.
Trickster.
Yes,
because you have, what's the word you have in the Hebrew there? You have Nakosh, and Nakosh, by definition, means illuminator, bright and shining one. Mm-hmm. In some interpretations, it can mean the bringer of mischief, and mischief meaning turning the world upside down was the more vernacular. And it doesn't mean in a bad way. It's like, I have come and I have turned the world upside down. It's not that. It's that the things that he did, it was the things that turned thinking around. It turned thinking upside down. And I remember expressing this to somebody. I just happened to have, you ever get Jehovah's Witnesses at your door?
Oh, yeah.
Probably about 20 years ago, I had a Jehovah's Witness come to my door, and I had nothing going on. I said, come on in. And we sat and talked, and I was talking about this stuff to him. And I remember him looking at me, the Jehovah's Witness guy looking at me. And he was a cool guy. He was a pretty cool dude, from what I could tell in our conversation. He just kind of shook his head and he goes, man, you are lost. I go, no, I'm not really. I'm thinking. I'm expressing these. I'm trying to figure these things out, because I talked about Satan in this same way. As I read, can you use, can I make a quote here that has some foul language in it? Can you do that on your show, or should I water it down?
Yeah. No, go ahead.
It's in the book, and you probably saw it. And I don't remember the exact quote, but he's talking about the Garden of Eden and talking about this. It's in this whole concept that sex in the Garden of Eden was something that this is what happened with the presence of Nakosh, of the serpent character, that he introduced sexual activity. I'm trying to put this in a way of It wasn't like a rape. It wasn't like anything like that. He was like, here it is. This is the gift. This is the thing. You don't know this yet. You guys get to have sex. And he's and he's offering this to Eve. That's what the forbidden fruit was. And then she turns and offers it to Adam. Goes, look at this great thing. And Adam partakes of it. He goes, yeah, that's pretty good. And for this is the fall of man. This was the fall of the serpent character in the Bible. And this quote that I had read, he said, and he wasn't being flippant. He was being very serious. He says, but he says, in essence, what happened is, he says, because we screwed, we're now fucked. And this is because his whole concept that he was building a case for was one that all the language in the Genesis story, in the creation story, the interaction between Eve and the serpent, that all this language and this Hebrew phraseology are all words that can be very well established, that while they're neutral terms, neutral action words, neutral verbs, they are all words that are used to describe seduction, used to describe sexual activity, of giving of oneself sexually, of taking of one's from someone else sexually. And in essence, what you had going on, again, not trying to be sensational with the language, but with Adam, Eve, and Nakash in the book of Genesis, you have basically an Edenic menage a trois going on, where you've got the serpent introducing and what happens? What's the first immediate thing that happens after? Now, if we're to take this story literally, where do we veer from literal and go into figurative language and so on? Because what does it say? As soon as this happens, Eve takes the forbidden fruit. Eve shares the forbidden fruit with Adam. What happens? Poof, they're naked. They both realize they're naked.
Yeah.
It's hard to have sexual relations when you're not naked. I think this opened their eyes, it said. This is why God comes down. And what is God? The omnipotent, all-powerful. He's obviously, in the story, he's using, well, you could attribute it to psychology, but it's like, Adam, where'd you go? I'm looking. It says, and God came in the cool of the day and walked through the garden and called out for Adam. Well, does God not know where Adam is? Well, yeah, he does. But Adam, where are you? And he says, well, we're hiding. And God says, well, why are you hiding? And Adam says, because we were naked. And God said, well, who told you you were naked? And that's when the whole thing, well, the woman, she gave me the fruit, the thing. And the woman's like, well, the snake, he gave me and the God's like to the snake, well, what have you done? But what's very interesting about all of this, and it reads just like, by the way, it reads like many other ancient cultures' mythological stories. Absolutely. But the thing, you've got God now chiding the serpent for this. But what's very interesting is that, once again, going back to the name of the serpent, Nakash, that's the word that's interpreted serpent in the Garden of Eden, in the book of Genesis. And it's not even a word that means serpent, but serpent has been attributed to it. It talks about, you and I already mentioned, the bright shining one, the one who is the bringer of knowledge, of mischief, of turning the world upside down, of the illuminator, the giver of forbidden knowledge. These are all the things that are attributed to the name in Hebrew, Nakash. Now, there's one other place in the Bible where Nakash is used in this connotation, and I'm sure you already know what it is. Maybe a lot of your listeners do too. When Moses, during the Exodus, when he leads the people out of Egypt. Oh, there you go. So you're already way a mile, light years ahead of me.
I'm just waiting for you to get to the part. I didn't even have to write the script.
And what happens here? All the people are complaining. So God, once again, the loving, My arms are open. Come to me. I am your Abba. I'm your daddy God, which is basically what Abba, father, means. I'm your daddy. I'm the one, not like I'm your daddy. It's I'm like the connotation is like the love of a daddy. Crawl into my lap. I'm God. But what does God do? The people are complaining in there. Oh, we could have stayed in Egypt. We'd be eating leeks and onions by the Nile right now. But no, we're out in the desert. We're wandering. We're eating manna, whatever the hell that is. This is all we got. And they're complaining. So what does God do? He sends snakes to bite them all, the fiery serpents. And so it starts biting, and the people are dying left and right. And they come running to Moses. Moses, save us, pray to God for us. And because all of a sudden they're all plagued with serpents. And I don't know how much passage of time is here, but it says, so Moses took and he had Aaron craft a serpent out of bronze. And he made this brazen, bright, shining serpent and put it on a pole and raised it up. And whoever would come and look at the pole and touch the pole, they would be healed of their snake bites. And the name for this in the Hebrew, the serpent coiled on the pole, is the Nakoshte. It's a form of the word Nakosh, the great tempter of Eve, seducer of Eve in Genesis. And so the Nakoshte, why is it called that? Because it is a bright, shining serpent put on a pole. It's the bright, shining connotation of it. And by the way, with this story, like many questions I have in the Genesis story, it's like, here's God. This is why these are the things that start to look mythological to me. Although you can have your theological answers to these, and we had all our pet answers for these and things that made sense to us in theology school. But here is the God, the great God, who you shall not turn your back on him. You shall worship him. You shall not, and so on. And the great deliverer, the one who has killed Egyptians for you, the one who has brought you out because you are his people, his unique, peculiar people. And you're in the desert. Now you complain about it. Why would they complain about it? First of all, that's the first question I have. If you and I, now you tell me, am I right or wrong? I'm going to assume that, like me, you would have this. If a God came down and led you out of Massachusetts and wherever you're stationed, and he brings you to a great inland sea, and the army is coming down on you to kill you, and God says, wait, do not fear, and the ocean opens up, and there's dry ground, and you walk on that dry ground. You're emancipated through the muddy path of the sea's bed, and you get to the other side, and the other army pursues you into this. I don't know what Pharaoh was thinking, but it's like, if I saw the power of another God opening up a sea, am I going to follow them to kill them into that same sea that other God obviously opened up? Well, that's the first question I had. Pharaoh, what were you thinking? What's that?
Pharaoh was a god. That's the thing. You have to understand. He was a god. So if another god opens it, he says, well, I'm greater than that one.
There you are.
That's your problem. Also, Egyptians worship the snake. So the serpent might also have other connotations where they want to keep them away from, other religions.
Excellent. Excellent, Lucky. Yeah, exactly. What was Pharaoh's first response to Moses? Who is this God that I should let your people go?
Exactly.
Sorry, I always lapse into Yul Brynner when I think of Pharaoh. Although Ramses II was not the Pharaoh of the Exodus. Anyway, so you've got this. Now let's go back to my original point on this. If you were part of this contingent that saw all of this happen, that saw God's plagues, that saw God defeating your enemies, that led you out into emancipation and freedom. You see the ocean opened up and closed in front of your eyes. You have this great salvific activity from this, obviously from the deity. And then you're out there and you don't like manna, so you're going to go, I don't know, who is this God anyway? I'm going to go back to Egypt because I want some, I had a leek garden back in Egypt. Are you going to do that? If you see these great mighty deeds of a deity, are you going to doubt that that deity exists? Now, maybe your kids might, because, well, they weren't there. They didn't see your grandkids. I could understand that another generation, but you're like a month out from this great thing. Hey, just a month ago, we saw the deity, God, very God, Elohim, open up the sea and swallow the armies of Pharaoh that were pursuing us. And a month later, you're going, who is this guy? Why has he got us out here? I don't know. You're complaining. And so what does God do? His response sends the serpents as one of the many things that happen to them. But then also, he's the same God that says, I am burning with wrath against my people, and I will kill them. I will take them out with serpents and great poisonous vipers until Moses.
But in the same instance, Moses was gifted with a magical staff that could turn into a serpent upon request. And then he used that to was the same, but that was the same magical stick that the magicians used. That was the same stick. And who was it that he didn't pray to God to open up the waters? He called upon another guy, I can't remember his name, to open up the waters too. So, what's going on here? Why would God give you a stick that turns into a serpent? That makes no sense.
That makes no sense.
Not unless you were a serpent. What if that God is a serpent and he's just battling other serpents, just like humans battle other humans? Maybe they're a different color.
and this whole thing with the serpent on the pole. Here's God burning in his wrath, killing the people with serpents, allowing them to be killed. And then he also creates a way for them to be saved. But he doesn't just stop the activity. Okay, I'll stop that. People, if they come to me and they call, no, you got to do a physical representation. I want you to put a snake on a pole. I want you to take time while all these people are dying from snake bites. I want you to cast a bronze serpent and put it on a pole. And it's like, wow. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And then the rod, there's a whole nother thing about that the whole rod issue of the rod of God. And that Moses uses a simple shepherd's staff that becomes, and something that comes to mind is it probably was just about a 2 or 3 foot long little piece of stick. You see them today, you go to the Middle East and in that region, and that's what shepherds still use today, a stick. It's like a pole, a little rod that they use to crack the sheep and the goats as they're herding them. And not the big Charlton Heston 6 foot long staff. I think that would have been too cumbersome.
Oh, so, absolutely. Anyway, you get to you got a good point. God, here's our next picture I found. You got God up above who plays with the people. You got the angels that are holding him up, and he's playing with the people, and they're bowing down to him, and he's just touching the world and screwing around with it like he's got nothing else to do. And then inside the world is what he has trapped. The big beast and the serpent are inside the Leviathan. The Leviathan. Yes. Exactly. But
it's interesting when you say here's God and he's with the heavenly host and he's touching the earth and so on. It reminds me of the opening of the book of Job from the Old Testament, and the book of Job being chronologically the oldest written book in the Old Testament, pre-Moses, pre-Abraham, all of that, pre-Judaism. And you've got Job, and he's telling the story, or the story's being told in the book of, and it says in the English Bible, it says, and Satan came into the courts of heaven and to accuse human beings against God. They're all holding court. It's like, there's a couple of things about this passage. First of all, in the English, it says Satan came in. In the Hebrew, it says there's an article in front of the name. It's the Satan. He's not even a personal pronoun being used. It meant the accuser, the deceiver, the Satan. So the Satan came into the courts of heaven. So if the Satan was cast on his belly and at the very inception, the first two people who existed. And God's curse on him was he shall crawl on his belly, and so on and so forth. Is this the character that comes in to accuse Job? Did he slither in on his belly into the courts of heaven? Doesn't say that. It says the Satan, the deceiver, came in to accuse Job in front of God. And here they are. You almost get a picture of the Olympians, of Zeus holding court with all the different characters that are the Olympian gods. And this is where they would almost play like a big chess game. I saw it done once. It was a Laurence Olivier. What movie was that? Oh my God. A movie that came out probably in the 80s, the early 80s. It had Pegasus in it, and it had, who was
Clash
the
of
character?
Titans.
Henry Hamill.
Clash of the Titans.
Yeah,
Clash of the Titans. And I think it was
Yes,
Laurence Olivier played Zeus. And you see this pristine, wonderful court of heaven, and they're all playing like a chess game with humanity. And so what happens, though, when the Satan accuses Job in front of God? What's God's response? Hey, don't mess with my guy, Job. He didn't defend Job. He says, all right, Satan, here's what we'll do. I'll let you do whatever you want to Job, and I'll bet you, I will wager you, he will still praise my name. And the Satan was saying, no, he won't. I'll wager you that he won't. So what do you got going on here? The deceiver, it doesn't equate him to the God, to Elohim, to the great I am. Doesn't equate him to him, but he places a wager. And what happens?
And it almost sounds like they sound like they're equals, because if you're not equal, you wouldn't bet, because you just say, I already know I'm God. I can do whatever I want. I can make him win or lose. Just a snap of my fingers.
That's it. The Satan, whoever that was, doesn't name him as Lucifer. It doesn't name him as Nakash. It doesn't even make a serpent reference to him. He's just called the deceiver.
Or more like adversary.
There you go. There he is. He was a reptilian.
Here's your deceiver. There you go.
There he is.
What? Yeah, that's the thing. What if these guys are those?
That's just another one of the mythological stories about God that's in our Judeo-Christian, not liturgy, our litany, and yet it smacks of so much mythology. Not that it couldn't be true. It's that every other religion has mythology like this of one sort or another.
Yeah.
So how do you know who to choose? There you go. Quetzalcoatl.
Yes.
And Quetzalcoatl, the great winged serpent god, who also died to emancipate humans. And so, yeah.
All different places, kind of same story,
So is there a proto story at the beginning of all of this that's the real story? Is it the Hebrew story? Is it the Mayan culture's story? Is it who was it? Krishna, who sat on a coiled serpent beneath a banyan tree in the garden and disseminated knowledge to humans.
We got that one too.
He's in there somewhere. There he is.
There he is.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
But that's the thing, serpents are in every religion or every region. And why? That's the big question. Why? It's like everybody, and in my impression, it's everybody thinks they've seen not everybody. I mean, lots of people think they've seen UFOs. Only a small portion of them actually have. Now, none of them could prove it, but some have some fantastic tales to tell once they see them. The question, so then it makes me think of this as the same thing. There was a serpent or several, these stories actually happened, and then they got, blown out of proportion because it was too unthinkable to actually tell anybody in the real sense of the word.
Well, and here a thought just occurred to me. I've done a ton of interviews over the last 10 years and done a ton of my own radio shows over the last 10 years and books where I talk about all this same stuff. And I haven't really changed my argument at all that I'm presenting, but I still have not drawn conclusions. One of these days that's going to catch up to me and somebody's going to say, well, what's your conclusion to all of this? Overall, because you talk about this an awful lot. And the point is, I don't know what the conclusion is. The conclusion I have arrived at to a certain degree is that the God that I was taught existed, I don't think exists. I think he is an interpretation of something. Is it wrong for people to believe that? No. Is it wrong for them to subjugate other people on that basis? Yes. I mean, you've got even you've got the Christian church that spent the first 200 years killing off the original concept of Christian followers. There was a great war between them and the Gnostics. Who was going to win this war? And it was the church, the one that became the Universalist literalist church, the Roman Catholic Church, the Universal Church, that by the end of the 2nd century had pretty much wrapped up this game and killed off everybody that had a different doctrine. Now, is this because God said, now this story of Jesus and the love of Jesus is so important that you get out there and salvation and not going to hell and going to heaven? So important, you got to kill everybody else who doesn't want to believe it.
The point is that you're going to go out and kill everybody because we said so, and then God will have favor on you.
Well, that's it.
For
what
doing
was
that.
The last command of Jesus after his resurrection and the ascension into heaven? What was the Great Commission, it's called? And what did Jesus say? Go out among the nations and make disciples, bringing people to the understanding and the belief. I didn't see him say, oh, and by the way, if they choose a different path, it's okay to burn them at the stake. It's okay to behead them. It's okay to saw them in two in a hollow log. It's these things that was not part of the Great Commission. It was Jesus, saying, bring people to me and go out and teach. And now, could God have done this? Accordingly to what we were taught, God had the power to do all this all by himself. He could have just, if God wants to put it to rest, it would be so easy for God to step into humanity, to step into the limelight and go, hey, it's like, you talk about UFO disclosure. I want Jehovah disclosure. I want God to step down. And of course, the answer in fundamentalism was, well, that's already been done in the form of God's son, Jesus. And I'm like, I believed that once, but that doesn't quite cut it anymore. That doesn't quite answer those questions. It's still left to the mind of finite people to choose to believe something that has infinite merit, infinite ramifications, but that you can't touch with anything other than a finite mind that just has to give in by a faith level and just choose to believe it. Okay. All right. Yeah. All this other stuff is bullshit. I'm just going to believe what the Bible says. Oh, poof. You're a Christian. Poof. You go to heaven when you die. And it doesn't sound, and I'm being, only source of my flippancy is to try to make my point understandable on a more vernacular level. Otherwise, you sit and you ponder these things to the end. And the serpent, I'm looking at this picture still of Krishna. And this whole serpent issue is in every culture. It permeates culture, even down to, think of the Chinese dragon. The Chinese dragon, what was the serpent wasn't even a form of sinfulness. It was a form of happiness. The Chinese dragon is happy, fertility, growth, fulfillment, understanding, knowledge. That was your
Yes.
Chinese dragon.
We got a knowledge one here somewhere.
There you go. Oh, there's even a comic.
There we go. I had these in order, but
somebody.
you kind of jumped around a little bit, and I thought, oh, I could.
Sorry.
I don't know what he's gonna say, but that's all right.
So yeah, and
knowledge,
stuff like
knowledge
that.
bringer. See, and that
Knowledge
there you go.
bringer.
See, he's got the staff, he's got the cloak on. You know, you see that serpent guy, and you think he's bringing me some knowledge. He's gonna,
this dude is imparting.
Yes. Then there's the other big question on that.
Yeah.
Is let's see here. Let's go. No, not that one. Okay. So you got this here. This is India. That's another Indian one. Then why do people keep writing about this? This is a comic book thing. It was about the serpents, the serpent men. Here you got the wise serpent with the staff, and he's bringing knowledge. And you got and then here again, you got the serpent, and he's got magical powers. He's coming with magic, knowledge, technology, whatever. And then what is this? This is the
caduceus.
This is also the sign of the serpent brotherhood. This is their thing with the twisted snakes and the snakeheads.
Right.
Serpent brotherhood.
My doctor has a lapel pin with that.
Yeah. Why wouldn't they have why is there a serpent brotherhood? To overthrow the world, or to bring knowledge to the world, or to keep the mysteries and the knowledge that's probably being tried to be, did you ever think about flipping it around? Flipping the Jesus thing around. Maybe Jesus was the bad guy. I hate to say this, but what if Jesus is the bad guy and the serpent's the good guy, and Jesus is there twisting his words, knowing that if he says, oh, go out and make disciples, that he knows that people are going to go out and force people to be disciples. They have to chop their heads off to, and then go out and spread the word and do all these things. And next thing you're conquering the world, man.
There's only one problem with that theory. Jesus never confronted any serpents.
No.
His disciples did.
Yes.
But Jesus was all about self-fulfillment in loving each other and finding God in yourself, where he said, you are God to the judges. So Jesus, if you take all the words of Jesus, it's a very small pamphlet to the rest of the Bible. And
the only time you have Jesus coming close to anything like that by the recorded stories of Jesus was his decrying of the Pharisees, of the religious leadership.
Oh, yeah.
Woe to you, scribes, Pharisees, hypocrites. He called them, he says, you are like whitewashed sepulchres or whitewashed tombs. You're pretty on the outside, all whitewashed, but on the inside, you are full of dead men's bones, he said. It's attributed to one of the great decrees, not a decree, a great decrying of the wicked. And he pointed it specifically at the religious leadership of the day. I got to tell you, the Sanhedrin of his day, the ruling religious council that was only allowed to be there if they let Rome, call the shots. But this council, they were probably made up of good people. Some of them anyway. I'm sure there were corrupt people there, just like everywhere else. But they were people that were there to be the ruling religious class of their people. And they struck these deals with Rome so they could maintain leading the people and teaching them and so on. Well, these are the same guys that Jesus is decrying. The same guys that, why was Jesus crucified? Because he was disrupting the flow of cash. That is the way. Doesn't it come down to that with everything else? We can say Jesus gave himself. He was the great sacrifice. But this was, at least, if this is all true, this was the vehicle on which it was done. Why was Jesus crucified? Because he disrupted the flow of money into the temple marketplace. He had people thinking, I don't need to come to God this way. I can come to God through another way. And so what did he, the week he's crucified was the second time he had done this. What did he do? He went into the temple and he kicked over the money changers' tables.
He whipped
and
them.
and he crafts a whip. It says out of leather strap. He just takes a bunch of junk, straps or a belt or something, and he's whipping these guys because he crafted a whip out of leather straps, and he starts whipping at them and kicking over their tables. And then you could see him standing there in the marketplace. How is one guy with a few disciples? It doesn't say the crowds rose up against the Jewish money changers. It says Jesus stood there and he said, "You have turned my Father's house, which is a house of prayer, into a den of thieves." And he says, "Get out." And he's decrying the temple system. And what did the Sanhedrin do? They go, "Oi, he's disrupting the flow of cash." And he's turning the people. And these were, I think, not people that weren't good and religious in their heart, and they believed what they did spiritually, but they also looked at the practical end and said, we can't maintain what we're doing here and maintain this peace with Rome if we got this upstart coming in and kicking and turning all the people against what we're doing. And so you got this guy. And I heard one theory about this when I was in seminary. Why was one guy like this with a handful of followers able to? It says he overturned the first time, I think it was, he overturned the money changers' tables and kicked them around and all of this and he maintained it for 3 days. Now, that might have been the last week of his life. But how was he able to do that for 3 days? Because the people pretty much got it. Yeah. They got what he was saying. He had support, but now they needed to take him out. And so that's why he died. That's why all of these things happened to him. And so I don't remember what the original point was, but hey, go back one.
There we go.
You showed the Abydos before Obami. You the Abydos lintel, this thing.
Yes.
I do have issue with this thing. People are, well, look at the helicopters and that's obviously Luke Skywalker's hovercraft in the upper right, and that's a UFO and all of this. Well, the problem that they're missing with this, and I have seen this up close and personal in my times in Egypt, there was a thing called erasure. I don't buy the Abydos lintel as being anything supernatural or spooky or weird. What you've got is a combination of layers that in a photograph like this, taken at the right light angle, is going to show you something that looks a lot more outstanding than it actually is. The imagery. There was a thing called erasure. When a pharaoh came to power, or a great nobleman, or a high priest, or something like that, many times they did not build all new temples and all new monuments. They would take over the existing stuff. Ramses II, the great Ramses the Great, he is actually one of the best ones known for this. He would take over these temples, and erasure was when they would take and scrape off the vestiges of the name before them, and they would have their name inscribed in its place. Now, you don't know that, and then they'd plaster over it and they'd paint it and so on. And so any imperfections were gone. Now you can with infrared photography, I think line art, things like that. You can now my own friends, John and Maria, at their site of Gebel El Silsila, some of the shrines there, the shrine of what the heck is it called? Not Amenhotep, the shrine of, oh my God, the general who took over after King Tut. What was his name again? I can't, Horemheb. You've got the Speos of Horemheb. And that's where tourists will come. They're not a big touristy thing, but if they're on a boat, sometimes the boats will moor there at the stairway they built that comes up out of the Nile there. And you can go walk around and look at all the shrines. This is my friend's archaeological site. Well, this was attributed to Horemheb. It's his statues in the back in the Holy of Holies here in this shrine. And a speos, meaning a temple or a shrine that's carved out of stone. It's not built up with stones. And there's a big hallway, and it's filled with all these inscriptions the family of Horemheb and all this and all the gods. And you go into the inner sanctum and there's Horemheb and his family and so on, carved on the walls. And now they have found, this has been known as the space of Horemheb for centuries. His inscriptions are all over it. Now with infrared, they found that, wait a minute, guess who? There's inscriptions underneath this that were not visible to the naked eye. It's been all scraped off. And if you take infrared, you find out, wait, this is the space of Hatshepsut is beneath it. A couple of generations earlier. And so I don't know if I'm supposed to be saying that. I think they published on that already. That was 5-6 years ago when I was in Egypt that we were talking about that. But at their site. So what you've got with the Abydos lintel here, this is a lintel piece that hangs over an archway in Abydos.
Yeah,
and,
when I seen it on the real picture, I mean, it looks really big here. It's really small. It's
small.
Yeah.
And what you've got here is the product of 3 different layers. And I once took this and I broke it down and I showed the different layers. How that way up in the upper left, where what it looks like is the tail of a helicopter. That's a piece of a hieroglyphic that means something. And I don't remember it off the top of my head. I'd have to go look it all up again. It's a hieroglyph that was there, but it was scraped down and a new hieroglyphic was chiseled in on top of it. And it's not as deep as it looks here. This is surface level stuff. And of course, remember, it was painted over too. And so what you have is with the erosion, the erasure of 3 different layers, at least 3 that can be perceived in the hieroglyphs here, in the imagery. When they combine together on top of each other, you've got this thing that strangely looks like a helicopter on the left. You've got something that we make out to be a UFO on the bottom right there. But now if you look in all these quadrants, that same thing that looks like the tail of the helicopter is in at least 2 of the other images. Down in the lower right, down in the right center, you've got that tail because it's a hieroglyph. It's the name of something. And I can't for the life of me remember what it was off the top of my head. But then something else put on top of it, which an arc and an eye and a this and a that. And all those things and combine. And it's not somebody had to sit down and try to figure out this puzzle. Somebody looked at that and go, oh, that's obviously a on top of a kaploof. And, that's what makes that image look that way. And so the Abydos lintel is one of those things where it's not skepticism that kicks in for me on that, but it's something completely different. And of course, I have my wife is calling on my phone. She is away right now. So pardon me, guys. Let me mute myself for just a second. Hang on.
You go right ahead. We'll take right over. Hey, Lucky Stone, what do you think? What do you think of all of this?
It's a lot of interesting information.
Yes,
but the serpents were sacred to a lot of the cultures around the area that the ancient Hebrews were. So, I mean, it all makes a lot of sense to me that why they would try to avoid people getting involved, because at the time of the Hebrews, they were like an island in a storm. And, they had to keep your people worshiping your God, because at the time of the original, there wasn't one God. There were many gods.
Multiple, yes.
There were multiple. So you had to keep, why is our God better? And why is that one bad? So,
yeah.
All right. Sorry about that, gents.
Oh, no problem. No problem. I mean,
my wife was out with her mom. They went to pick up our new car. And
for you.
So she's been out for a while. She would have left before I fell asleep, or when I fell asleep, and so earlier in the evening. And so she was just calling, and she apparently the word got around that I was supposed to be here, because I got the call from Teresa at 9:12 my time, so it's already 12 minutes late. But Randy said, Rocky put out a message even that's saying, where's Scotty? So apparently word got around in that first few minutes. So,
Oh boy, when you're supposed to not be somewhere or be somewhere,
Yeah.
everybody knows.
Everybody knows.
Jeez. But
So-
anyway, on top of all of this, and I totally agree with this. I seen an article on this somewhere, what you're saying about these. And
Yes.
that's kind of why I put them up too. But the next part is that it goes through the same throughout history, because the Romans,
Yes.
and correct me if I'm wrong, is when they switched from doing multiple gods to single god.
Yeah.
Then they renamed all of their statues that they had. So Isis became the Virgin Mary. Neptune became Peter.
That's it.
So forth, and they just painted them up a little
We'll
bit.
take a
different,
look at
shipped them out.
Constantine.
Yeah.
Who by 325 AD, he had already started convoking these councils. The Council of Nicaea was 325, and there were many other councils after this. But what did he do? He established himself. He became Christian, and he is I think, surface Christian in name only. He used it politically.
Yes.
What was his mandate at the Council of Nicaea? And his mandate in general was, there shall be one God and one empire. This is so one God equates to one emperor, one religion equates to one empire. And he told all these guys, as they're going through the stuff of the council, he said, I don't care what you end up with at the end. It just better damn well be unanimous, because I want unanimity. And he established himself as the first pope of, well, I don't know if it was the first, a pope. And but this is early on. Remember, I told you there was this great battle between the literalist Orthodox Church and the Gnostics for that first couple centuries after the time of Christ. By the time you're at the end of the 200s, you're entering into the 300s with Constantine, and Constantine being the guy that's already saying 325 years after the time of Christ. He's already saying, look, we're in control of all this, and they're killing, and they're all this, and they're rewriting things. They're kicking scripture out of what became the canonized Bible. How can you say, well, this book is God breathed and this one is not? That's what they did. And the books they couldn't agree on, they kicked them out and they put them in the apocryphal books. You buy a Catholic Bible, you'll find mostly the apocryphal books are in there. Books like Enoch and others. So
yeah. Well, didn't he used that? He brought the religion and the church, the religion, the church, and the government as togetherness at the same time. And he also said, hey, if you were going to hold political office, guess what? You better believe in the Christianity.
You better believe in the Christ.
And if you don't, you fall down the ladder. And, so of course, what are you going to do? Sure, I believe in that stuff. Yeah, I'm right on board with that.
And so you've got the same thing going on with that you had with erasure, like the Abydos lintel. Why did they do erasure? Why did they engage in that? And folks, if you want to look it up, it's just the word erase, U-R-E, erasure. Look up Egyptian erasure, Abydos lintel, and erasure, and you're going to find some explanations of what's there. But and it's not just people being skeptical. It really is UFOs. It's really not. That's sad, because it's a cool thing until you decipher it. But this is exactly what has gone on in Christianity, in the writing of biblical texts. There is erasure. We've got to get rid of something in the Bible and we've got to add the things that make it say the things we want it to say. And getting into studying where those things are and what they are and what human beings had a hand in this. According to scripture, the book of Revelation was the last revelation of God to man that was to be written down in text. And what did even John, in his 90s, in his dotage on the Isle of Patmos, when he penned the book of Revelation, the disciple John, disciple of Jesus. And he said, if anybody should add to these words that I've written here, so shall be added to you all the plagues that you've read in these texts. Those of you who would detract from anything I've written here, your name shall be withdrawn from the book of life. And so he says all these things. He's saying, don't fuck with it, is what he's saying, what I've said here. But this is one guy who, in his 90s, he either genuinely had discourse with God, and God gave him all of these things. That's a possibility that's still on the table. Or the dude was in his dotage. The dude, whatever he was smoking to make his rheumatoid or arthritis work for him, was affecting the way he was running. We don't know for sure. And I don't mean to be flippant with that as much as to say, we got a guy who wrote this crazy book. And we've seen lots of crazy books written by crazy guys over the centuries.
And I totally agree with that. Now, you know, as I understand, like a lot of this stuff was channeled. And then you got to look back into the day. Most people self-medicated, like you're talking about. If you're in your 90s, you got arthritis and you got other things wrong, you're self-medicating with, well, probably mushrooms or, you know, other things that you can pick up or find or know
psilocybin.
And yes, exactly, because you're saying I'm in a lot of pain, and guess there's no cop to say,
now,
hey, you can't have that stuff.
We don't know John had any of those things. John might have been just one of those cool old coots that
he could have
had not lost his mind. He was still strong, and you know, he was writing, he was channeling God. And what was the whole thing in ancient times? If you were channeling a god and you were not a madman, then you were not worth your weight, your salt, so to speak. You had to be, there was a certain level of insanity that came on somebody who, you've got even David, King David, when he goes to see the king of their greatest enemy, who he was working for in his years before he became king. He has to enter the city and froth at the mouth and act like he's insane so he could get through the gates and go see the king. Madness was part of being a seer.
But and you're right, because like I did a little study on this, and it seems like all these people who had encounters with angels or they had channeling of some sort, they would go to these caves, which I'm sure you've been there, you've seen it. They went to these caves. They sat in there for days and days and days at a time with little next to no food. They didn't even come out. Somebody came to the door and dropped off some enough to keep them alive, and they fasted. And if you ever fasted for any length of time, your mind starts to play tricks on you.
I can fast for 3.5 hours. I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting faint.
Yeah, but can you imagine it doing it for 30 days?
Yeah,
and then and all of a sudden you're I'm seeing hallucinations. You know, I'm in a cave. And I don't know what the hell's going on. Oh my goodness! I mean,
now, is it out of the question to say that a deity can channel with someone? If a deity exists, they can channel with someone? No, it's not off the table.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that there's not the possibility that these things are true, that they actually happen this way. But I'm saying in comparison to everything else you see out there, it's just another one of these things. Yes. It just happens to have the Christian label on it this time.
Yeah.
And so you start looking at all of this. You take the stories from Genesis. You take the stories in the New Testament. You look at all of these, the Nakash, the Satan, the Lucifer, all of these things down through the ages, and there is an evolution of thought there and a progression of creating something. It was kind of nebulous back there when Moses wrote about it in the book of Genesis, which I don't believe there's any reason to think Moses didn't exist. I don't think there's any reason to think he didn't write the first 5 books of the Bible. It's tradition, but I think he did it. But then what happened after the Babylonian captivity, which was the mid-500s BCE, where Babylon comes and sacks, or Persia, sacks Israel, and they destroy the temple, and there you go. You're looking for like Nebuchadnezzar or somebody like that. And
I don't have a Nebuchadnezzar. Sorry.
They sack Israel, and they take all the people away, and they drag them back to Babylon. And they're a captive people. These are people that they try to incorporate into their own people group. And so what happens? All the temple stuff is gone. The writings are gone. The books of Moses are gone. What happens when finally they're set free? All right. You guys can all go home now. We're done. The Babylonians send Israel. You can go back to your homeland. So the mass exodus to their homeland in the 500s. And what happens? They go and they start rebuilding the temple. And then they find that they don't have any of their scriptures anymore. They've passed this down by oral tradition. All the things, the books of Moses are gone. The Ark of the Covenant is gone. All these things are gone. So what do? They go to, nobody knows the year because it wasn't dated. And there's some people that don't believe it ever even actually happened. But you had these 72 rabbis who went under, we know the era, we know about when, they go to Egypt, where the ruler, the pharaoh there, the king of Egypt, is Ptolemy II, a generation or so after Alexander the Great. And what do? They come to him and they ask permission to go to where? The Library of Alexandria, so they can find all the old writings that were stored there, the Jewish writings. And what was their purpose? Their purpose was to reestablish the history of Israel and reestablish the faith for Israel. And so they went there and they spent, I don't know how much time there they spent, but they wrote what they ended up with after looking through all these documents. You know, I get a picture in my mind of from the movie in Lord of the Rings, where you've got Gandalf going to the library and he's going through all these old papers and old scrolls trying to find. This is what they're doing at the Library of Alexandria. And they put all these 72 guys in different cells, and they all were writing what they knew from a combination of oral history and looking up at the Library of Alexandria, this amazing place that, who was it? A Christian bishop was in part destroyed because it was pagan literature. But anyway, they create what was known as the Septuaginta or the Septuagint. The Septuagint, back then, the language of commerce. This is what Alexander the Great did. He Hellenized the world. And so the language of commerce was Greek, and they wrote in Greek the Septuagint. And the Septuagint was the Greek version of what you go pick up a Bible at the bookstore today, or go to your home bookshelf, open up your Bible to the Old Testament and flip through it. That's the Septuagint. That is what they compiled back in the 4th century BCE. Now, when they did this, the big question that is left is this: what was rewritten? What was omitted? What was not known anymore? When you look at, and I specifically brought this up, I think I mentioned it in Reptilians, but more than the book I wrote after Reptilians was The Exodus Reality, the story of Moses and the writings of Moses. And you go in and you look at all of this, and you've got things like, remember when I said Ramses II, when talking about the Abydos lintel and erasure and claiming something? Ramses II, it says in the book of Exodus, which is from the Septuagint. This is where we get this now. We don't have the original copies of Exodus, but it says Ramses II had the Hebrews building in captivity, building the treasure cities of Pithom and Ramses. It's right there in the book of Exodus. Well, now here's the problem with that, is that the treasure cities of Pithom and Ramses were cities that were built by Ramesses II, but they weren't actually built by him. They were reclaimed by him, and he put his name on them. And what this is telling us, it says the Hebrews built the treasure cities of Pithom and Ramses. Yeah, they did. But it wasn't Pharaoh Ramses II who did this. They built the city, but it was called something else when they built it. It was the city beneath Pi-Ramses. And that city, the name is slipping my mind right now. It starts with an A. This was the city where in the Nile Delta region would have been in the region called the land of Goshen, which is where all the slaves dwelt. They had their own city. And this is where they believe the palace of Joseph was a couple of 100 years earlier. And they believe they found it, by the way. So this city that was beneath, why is that slipping my mind? I've only said it 3 million times. But this city beneath is what the Hebrews built, what the Israelites built. Mm. What happened was Ramses II reclaimed the city and renamed it. He didn't even know who the Hebrews were. They were gone 150 years before he even came to the throne. So why does the Bible say they built the treasure cities of Pithom and Ramses? Because they did. They built the city beneath. Yes. That's the city. And then it was Ramses that reclaimed it. And so this is the same thing as erasure. This is the same thing as and this is what you get with the Septuagint. What did they do when they wrote that? They don't have the original documents anymore. Did Moses in his book actually write about the city that was beneath Pi-Ramses? Yeah. Did he actually name the pharaohs in his time? Mm-hmm. Did he actually know where Mount Sinai was and name that? In a sense, all this was lost to the Israelites when they, after the Babylonian captivity, and they had to go back and rewrite their history. Imagine if in the United States we were overthrown by a foreign power and dragged out, let's say Canada came down and invaded us. And they're becoming very tyrannical and totalitarian right now in current news events anyway, not to lapse into politics. But let's say they become totalitarian and they invade the United States and they beat us and they drag us all up to Canada. And after about 100 years, the tyrannical ruler of Canada says, okay, you can all go home now, eh? And so he sends us all home. And what's gone 2 generations down the road? Do we have our founding documents anymore? Do we know what the Constitution is anymore? Do we know what the Declaration of Independence is anymore? Do we know what the Federalist Papers are anymore? Do we have any statues of our founders? Do we have any of the original concepts of what we were founded on? Yeah, maybe orally, by oral tradition and so on. But if we go back and we go, we got to find a copy of the Constitution. Yeah. And so you put it in that context. This is where Israel was. And so when all of these things were written in the Old Testament, especially written about Nakosh, about Lucifer, I think a lot of these Luciferian overtones and the mention of the serpent, it doesn't come for 1,000 years later. Why is it that long? Why didn't Moses mention that? Well, I think it was invented by the rewriters of the Old Testament. We got to write down, we got to, this is what we were taught to, but we got to add this in there for clarity, and so that's what they did. So anyway.
So speaking of that, now I have a question on this. Mm-hmm. You're right with everybody rewriting, and to put it in context for everybody, for what the world we live in, like you said, Canada, and we're doing it ourselves. Hey, this bridge was named one thing, and now they renamed it. We took down our statues, and we're putting up new statues, and we're rewriting our history as we speak in our own country. Only thing is you just got to think what's going to happen in 100 years. People are going to forget that it was Theodore Roosevelt that had the statue out there, and now it's George Floyd that has the statue out there, and they're going to go, who the heck was George Floyd? I don't know why that street was named Roosevelt or Roosevelt. Was it Roosevelt? Who was Roosevelt? Yeah, who was that guy?
I grew up in Minneapolis, and we live on the outskirts of Minneapolis and St. Paul, across the border into Wisconsin, rural Wisconsin. Yes. But St. Paul, if you were to go refer to, hey, I'm going to go over to Pig's Eye today and pick up something, Pig's Eye, what the hell are you talking about? Well, Pig's Eye was the original name for what is now St. Paul, the capital city of Minnesota, and a bustling capital city. That was Pig's Eye. And so now, would anybody today know of Pig's Eye? Not by that name. Very few people know the historical reference. But what if somebody 1,000 years from now was writing about it?
Yeah.
And they'd say, and or even think of New York. New York's even a better example because more people know about it. How many people know that New York was actually New Amsterdam, built by the Dutch? And so now today, when we say the British built New York, well, yeah, they did, but you're missing the whole part of history that it was the Dutch that built New Amsterdam. Yeah. And New York was just, they renamed it is all they did. This is exactly what you have.
They just built, renamed, rebuilt on top of New Amsterdam and
That's
so
right.
forth and so on. But the thing is we're looking in the past, and this was stuff that happened over hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years. And we're just talking a small timeline of 200, 300 years, So that's to give everybody context. So I am going to say, so you had a little bit in the book about the Sumerian culture. Now, before the Torah, before Moses, before all of that, you had the Sumerian culture, and they didn't talk about God and the devil or the serpents or what, they didn't have that. They had something different. And isn't it coincidental that their culture, 1,000 years before all of this, had stories that were very similar to the stories, that the Hebrews or the Israelites were trying to save.
Exactly.
So the question is, were they just copying somebody else's stories too? Or saying, well, we got part of a story and we went to the library and, well, this makes sense and we'll put it together and call it our own.
Yes. That's exactly what happened. This is the story of civilization.
Yeah.
So,
so those stories are really older than we can even imagine them to be, because what was it? Noah would have been Arthur-Hasis, or isn't it Arthur-Hasis? I think something like that. And the story of that. And then you have, and he built it. And if you ever read that story, I mean, he was this king, and he built this. He was told by Enki or Enlil or one of the gods to build the boat on top of the mountain, and then he collected, which makes more sense, all the goats and cows and animals that he wanted to save, and then he brought along a carpenter and a plumber and an artist and a doctor, and he brought all these people on the boat that he needed to save. And sure enough, when the floods came, they came right up to the mountain, lifted the boat, and off he went. And to me, I'm thinking, well, okay, that's a better story than the animals came 2 by 2.
Right.
Lived in the boat for so many days,
40 days.
Yes, 40 days. Yes. But you know what I'm saying? It's like, whoa, which story is more practical?
That's it.
Anyway.
Yeah. By the way, it just popped into my head. Avaris was the name of the city. Avaris.
I was trying to look it up in the book here, and I couldn't find it. I was like trying to page through. I got a million markers, and it's hard to find one.
Right.
But
so,
yeah, so it goes on and on. These stories are even older than old. I mean,
yes,
and it starts with here's the Sumerian stuff, the tree of life, is this the tree of knowledge, and so forth and so on. And then
that tree of life and the tree of knowledge exists. It's pan-cultural, especially in the Middle East and all these different religions and cultures that were there. That tree of life existed. And that's another big question that I hinted at early on, was in the Garden of Eden story. We were always taught that even when I was in Bible school, I didn't know this right away until we got to these things and we heard about it, is that there were 2 trees in the Garden of Eden. There was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and there was the tree of life. And God told them not to eat of either one. And what was the, did he just do this flippantly, or is this a myth? Why did God say that? Don't eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Well, this is apparently the tree that Adam and Eve ate of, according to the Bible.
And he said, I think if you eat from the tree of life, you'll become just like us.
You become God. Because now here's the big question this raised for me. They ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and learned they were naked. They learned about sex. They learned about these things that are not mentioned so much in the Old Testament. And then what does he do? He puts an angel at the gate to prevent them from also eating of the tree of life. And what does it actually say in the scripture? And you're very familiar with this. This is the first mention in the Bible, chronologically anyway, of a triune God or a multiplicity of gods. It says, after Adam and Eve eat of they have their meeting with Nakash and they eat the fruit and so on. It says, and Elohim said, the humans have eaten of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and have become like us. Let us now let us prevent them from also eating of the tree of life, lest they become immortal like gods. And something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing, dastardly paraphrase there. But that's exactly what's said. And you've got God referring to himself as us. Let us, and he's talking to, and then there's the divine council, which you find later in the Old Testament. I remember when I first heard the divine council, I thought, oh, that's something that we've ascribed. That's a name we've ascribed. That's what the Bible calls it. There was a divine council. You go to Psalm 82, and you will find, when you're looking up and reading about Nakash, you're reading about the bright shining one and all of this, the bringer of forbidden knowledge and so on. Psalm 82 is a psalm that talks about, and God, in the English, is in God, stood in the midst of the gods. And he said, you are all gods. You are all the bright shining princes of heaven. Well, in the Hebrew, it's an Elohim stood in the midst of the Elohim. And he said to them, you are all Elohim. What's the definition of Elohim? It's the name used for God almost 3,000 times in the Old Testament, amongst other names. What does Elohim mean? El being the name for simple, the name for God, El, E-L. You have it in the Anunnaki god, Elil and Enlil. Elil was the same base word. And Elohim, him, is the same suffix in the Hebrew, put on El to make a compound word. Him is the same suffix you see on like Nephilim. Him was a denotation of plurality. And so when you see the name Elohim, Elohim, it literally means God of or among many gods. The God of many gods. The God who is comprised of many gods. The God, and what do you have when you have in Genesis 6, where it talks about the Nephilim? And Moses writes this. What does he say in the book of, in Genesis 6? He says, and the sons of God, in the English, the sons of God came down and intermingled with the daughters of men and had children by them. They were the men of old, the heroes of renown, and the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and so on. And it talks about it for 4 verses and leads right into the story of Noah and the ark. Yeah. Well, in the Hebrew, where it says, and the sons of God came down, sons of God, and there might be many people out there listening that have heard my shows. They've heard me say this a million times. You may even know what I'm getting at here. The sons of God in the Hebrew language is the B'nai Ha-Elohim. So we already broke down, what does Elohim mean? God of many gods. It's a plurality. So what do you have when you have B'nai Ha-Elohim in the Hebrew, the sons of God? It's the sons of the God of many gods. So the offspring of the God of many gods. Yeah. And Elohim, of course, could be used interchangeably. In singular, it meant a singular God. in plural. It was like, and I've described it as simply as saying it's like our word deer. Deer. I saw a deer in my front yard. I saw a herd of deer in my backyard. It's that kind of a word. It all depends on the sentence structure around it as to how it's being used
and
in
how
the
it's
Hebrew. And so what do you got? In Psalm 82?
Sorry. Isis, when he says in, numerous times in the Bible, hey, it gives it away as saying, I am the only God, you should have no other gods before me.
You shall have no other gods before me.
Well, then who's he talking about? If you're the only one.
That's it. Even the commandment in the first commandment, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, thy mind, and you learned it in the Old English, the King James. You shall love God and have none other before him. Well, what does that mean? It's connoting that there are other gods that you could put in the place of God, the God of the Bible. This is even in the commandments. There is also I got a rabbit trail on this for just a second. The whole notion that if in mythology, if you know the name of a deity, you can have some kind of power over it. Even down to the Rumpelstiltskin legend. You don't know my name, and you won't have any power over me unless you can utter my name, Rumpelstiltskin. And so we see this all down through mythology and literature. And so you've got God who in the commandments, how is it? Thou shalt have no other God before me. Oh, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for whosoever does this shall not be held guiltless. The commandment says, well, that's the Old English. In Hebrew, it's written as, do not use the name of God for vain or self-uplifting purposes, for whoever does this will not be held guiltless. This would be like claiming the name of God and using the name of God to your own personal ends. The personal name of God. Well, look at the story of Moses and the burning bush. Let's push aside whether we believe it's real or not. It really happened. Moses was a real guy. He wrote about it. Like most contactees or abductees and UFO and alien culture, they're the only ones there. They're the only ones that experienced and saw it. They're the crackpot, like Moses was the crackpot. I saw this in the burning bush. Oi. And so what does God say? What does Moses say to God there? People don't catch this. After God gives him all these things he's supposed to do, I want you to deliver my people. I want you to go to Egypt. I want you to see the king. What does Moses do? He leans in and he says, whom shall I say sent me? And what is Moses saying there? He's saying, what's your name? I need this power. What's your name?
Yeah, Rumpelstiltskin, tell me your name.
Yes.
And then I'll be sure I know it. See?
What's God's response to that? You tell them, God pretty much basically says, none of your goddamn business what my name is. You tell them, I am sent you. I am that great I am. Moses is like, okay. And now what's interesting, by the way, another mini rabbit trail, the phrase, I am that I am. That phrase is an ancient Mesopotamian wordplay that you don't catch by reading it on the surface. You got to research, you got to study this stuff. What did I am that I am mean? It was an old Mesopotamian wordplay that literally meant out of Mesopotamia, Sumer, Akkad, the Sumerian culture, Mesopotamian culture. I am that I am. It actually literally means I am that Enki they speak of. That was the wordplay that went with that phrase. Moses borrowed that word phrase for a reason. He wasn't like an idiot. When he wrote this down, do you think for the first 40 years of his life, living as nobility in Egypt, going to the school of the nobles, being educated there, very possibly being groomed for a possible pharaonic takeover, as a pharaoh. He was I believe this guy, I believe he was Senenmut, I believe. He was a guy that was a grand vizier, 1 foot off the throne. Pharaoh in the place of Pharaoh was what the grand vizier was, and held 92 other royal titles. That's who I think the real guy was. But you've got this guy, well educated. Do you think he didn't know what the Mesopotamian wordplay was and what it meant? He did, and he put it in his writings. God said, I am that I am. I am that Enki they speak of. Now, the big question is, we don't understand what the connotation is because he doesn't explain it. Was God saying when he said, I am that I am, is he saying, Enki? That's me. I'm Enki. I am that Enki they speak of. Or is he saying, you know that God they speak of, that Enki? He doesn't. I'm the God. I am really Enki. I am all gods. I am the God. Yeah. So we don't know what the connotation is there, but
yeah, he's basically giving him wordplay and the finger at the same time.
Yes,
and saying, it's you ought to know, you know who I am.
Yep.
But I'm not going to explain it to you because you're a low life, and I'm the higher, and just
it's the same concept. When I was a youth pastor, in my early days, and I used to teach stuff to my kids, and I was very open with them, and I tried to teach them in a way that wasn't just follow the liturgy. I said, we cry out to God for help. Mm-hmm. We get ourselves into trouble, or we're like, I've done this before to myself. God, throw me a bone. Show me something. And I said, do you know why you don't get that? Do you ever think maybe God's response is, I've already given you everything you need to know. You got all the tools, dude. Figure it out. And I understand that. On the other hand, it's like, God, if you've got one of your creation begging to know something, pleading, give it to him. What's wrong with going, okay, here you go. Okay, there you go. Now I'm going to shut it off. Now you got it? You got that now? Okay, now you see. And but God doesn't do that, or doesn't do it anymore. No, if he ever did do it. And then you think of these patriarchs in the Bible. We think, wow, they had God just walking alongside them all the time. Well, when you really boil it down, you look at a guy like Abraham. Who was he? They think he was the son of the high priest at Ur, and the big ziggurat that they found at Ur. What is now they've determined is Ur over in Iraq. That this is where Abraham came from. Ur of the Chaldees, it says in the Bible. And he left all of that on the word of God coming to him and telling him so. And when you add up all the experiences that Abraham had over a life that lasted well over 100 years, according to Scripture, handful of minutes, and then the rest of his life. I talked about this like when talking about Joseph. I remember I wrote an article at Christmas time about Joseph and Mary getting the grand news from the angel that she was going to give birth to the Messiah, which is something every Jewish girl wanted to have in that day and age. And so she's going to give birth to the Messiah. Joseph, it says he's going to put her away privately. He's going to divorce her. They weren't really married yet. They were betrothed. And imagine the way he felt. Imagine the way guys feel nowadays, or women. Your partner cheats on you and has sex with somebody else and so on. Imagine the embarrassment, the humiliation, God, I guess I'm not good enough, huh? Or whatever it might be. But I think it's an indication that Joseph probably really loved her, at least in the story, because he's going to make it a quiet thing. We're just going to have done. We're going to get back home. It's going to be done. And what happens? The angel of the Lord comes to Joseph and says, don't divorce your wife. Don't put her away, as the term was. They were betrothed for a year. Don't put her away. This is the Son of God. This is the Messiah, the long-awaited kinsman redeemer. And so Joseph doesn't. And he has this magnificent dream. And this is all to illustrate this point, is that he has this dream But what was it like for Joseph at 7:45 in the morning after he's woken up after this dream? He's drinking his coffee, scratching his ass, looking out the window, watching the sunrise and going, no, was that dream? Was that really God or an angel? Or am I just, So revelation, it's something we don't know. The same thing with all of this stuff. It really comes back down to the question, do we believe? And then you got to look at all the other stuff around it. On just the virgin birth alone, you could take that as a whole study of ancient literature and ancient religion and find out what that really means.
Oh, we could talk about that all night long.
Totally different. That's a whole nother book.
Yeah, that's a whole nother book. Does virgin mean this? Did Mary really get pregnant? Did she get pregnant by an angel? There was that story. Then there's the, who is the real father? I mean, there's a million and one
Was it
questions.
Joseph?
Yeah, was it her?
Was it
him?
Joseph?
And then they just covered it up. Yeah,
and of course Joseph, he's never mentioned again in the Bible story of Jesus.
He's gone.
Now, did he die? Was he a little older? Was he killed? Did he have a heart attack? Did he have diabetes? What is it? Why is Joseph no longer there when it's just Mary when Jesus? If it was my kid, even my adopted kid, led to believe by God, and they wanted to crucify him, do you think I'd be present? Do you think I'd have a voice in the thing? Don't kill my son. He wasn't there, so he was gone. He was either a fictional element, or he died many years earlier.
Yes.
Or I don't know.
Who knows?
Whatever. So
it's a good topic to think about, because you're right. But then again, he was a carpenter. Who taught him how to be a carpenter?
That's it. His dad.
Yeah.
What did they say when Jesus entered? He was only in ministry for about 3.5 years. And that's what we have in the Gospels.
Yeah.
And what did they say in Nazareth, the town he grew up in? When he's preaching, what did the Nazarites, or the Nazarethans, they're not Nazarites, they're the inhabitants of Nazareth. What was the crowd saying? Hey, we know this guy. Isn't he the carpenter's kid? They said.
Yeah.
Isn't he the carpenter's son? They asked.
The carpenter's son.
And why should we believe him? He's the kid we saw grow up.
Yes, exactly.
And
so what happened there to change it all? He woke up one day and said, "Hey, guess what? I got all these. I can do all these things."
That's it. And I think I always went along with the theory to think that it was probably plausible within the faith. I adhered to the theory that becoming Messiah was what Jesus was. I think if he truly was the Messiah sent by God, at least in his understanding, it's something that grew on him. He had to grow into this role. What do you have even at the Garden of Gethsemane when he's praying before he's arrested that night? What does he say? Now, we don't know if this is added later to make the story juicy or if it really happened. What does it say of Jesus? He prayed and said, hey, if it's your will, let this cup pass from me. I don't want to do this. Now, was that because he understood who he was supposed to be? When he's in front of Pilate, is that a manufactured conversation where Pilate asks him, he says, you're being silent, you're being mute, and you're not answering my questions. He says, don't you know that I have the power to save your life and set you free, or to crucify, or to have you killed? And what was Jesus' response? You would have no power against me at all unless my Father gave it to you from heaven. And hi, there's my little one, my littlest.
Hello.
And so now the question is, we're fraught with this whole idea of what was added to make Jesus fit the mold, to make Jesus fit who he was supposed to be by his followers afterwards. I know there are certain things, and I love this. This is just a pet thing of mine. I got to mention it, is that they're used to for centuries. Pontius Pilate was looked at as being part of the Jesus myth because we don't really know anything about this guy. There's no historical record for him. The only record you have is Josephus. And we all know how Josephus, kind of dubious history. And first century Jewish Roman historian.
Yeah.
And so Pontius Pilate, though, there was no proof archaeological evidence that the man ever existed, other than a few scant things around. Until 1964, there was an archaeological team working in Caesarea, what was Caesarea Philippi, on the, I think it's Tel Aviv now, or near Tel Aviv. And Caesarea Philippi was the old Roman capital of Judea. And what do they find? In a stairway, in a theater, like a Colosseum type of a theater, they find these stones, reused stones from old buildings. One of the stones, when they flipped it over, it had this inscription on it. And it was partially broken, but the inscription dates back 2,000 years. It's built into a building that's almost 2,000 years old. And they flip it over. What's the inscription say? Praefectus Pontius Pilatus, dedicating the Tiberium. They think it was a gymnasium or something like that, or a theater to somebody, and he's dedicating it to the Caesar. Mm-hmm. And so that's now in the Jerusalem Museum. You can see this cornerstone. Look up the Pilate cornerstone, and you'll see a picture of it. So for me, that was where everybody who denied that he may have existed was like, whoosh, oh, Pilate existed. There's archaeological evidence. And so it's the same with all of this stuff. How do you prove any of this really happened? And I know we're here talking about reptilians, which we kind of hit on once or twice. But when it comes to the reptilian race and all of that stuff, all the same thing. You take that outside of the Bible. How do you know any of this is real? I was asked point blank, who was interviewing me? I want to think it was somebody. It was either Whitley Strieber or it was Mysterious Universe, the boys out of Australia. They asked me point blank at the end of the interview. So, Scotty, do you believe there are reptilians? Or do they not exist? And I said, my answer firmly is yes. I don't know for sure. Because we don't know. Like all this other stuff, we have no idea of how to trace this other than to look at mythology, to look at sculptures, to look at paintings, to look at comparative religions, and say, with all of this information about the serpents, the reptilian, all this information, is that in a sense, an ancient scientific methodology at play, in that you can't bring it into the lab and test it, but if every culture talks about it, is there something to that? Or every culture has a god. Does that mean God exists? I don't for a minute not believe that God, I'm saying that backwards. I don't for a minute believe that there is no God. I was just on our radio station because my new show is I'm going to relaunch my show at Odyssey Radio, because it was bought out by friends of mine, and we're relaunching. I've been off the air for about 5 months, and I just took a hiatus. And so we're relaunching my show, and they said, why don't you just throw some of your old archives and let's put them up. I got 600 archived shows. So, up to 1,200 hours of fun and entertaining listening. Mm-hmm. And so I said, let's do, for this whole last week, let's do the series I did on the jinn. And it was this guy, Wesselman was his name, a PhD back in the 70s. He had this experience where he interviewed, not like okay, you sit down on that side of the table, I'll sit on this side of the table. Now tell me, how do you feel today? What's it like being blue? All of this, it wasn't like that, but he had an encounter with the jinn and conversations with the jinn. And in his conversation, first of all, you got to believe that his experience really happened. Mm-hmm. So you got to look to the credibility of the man, as with everything else, pretty credible in other areas of life. So he has this conversation with the jinn. And the reason I bring this up, I was actually listening because I had to reburn all of these for the archives. And I was thinking, oh gosh, what did I say? This was 2 years ago already that I talked about that. It had 6 episodes on it. Mm-hmm. And it's talking about God. And he, of course, asks the jinn, who are you? There's these ideas we have about who the jinn are. They're evil. They're the ones that will be very careful. They're very dark. This is darker than demonology even. And the jinn if the jinn was being honest with him, the whole idea of you can rub the lamp. Who'll rub my lamp? And you get 3 wishes. Well, the genie said, well, I can because of this and that and the other thing. I can't remember the whole story. He says, I will grant you something. What do you wish of me? And he says, I want to know. I want your time. I want to know about you. I want to know who you are and what you do. And so he has this conversation with the jinn, this PhD fellow. And so he asked him about God. And the jinn said, oh, yeah, there's definitely a God. And he asked, who is this God? He says, well, he's not the creator God that you think he is. They said, that's the original. We refer to him as the originator. There's the originator, then there is this, and then there is this. And it goes through, and I only bring that up to say you've got somebody who apparently connected with something on a very spiritual level, a channeling level, if you will. Mm-hmm. That would be the only thing I would crave in this life. And, I've said this before, and I had somebody gasp in an interview. I said, you know what I really want? I want to meet one of these beings. I want to talk, not so they can eat my soul and destroy my life. I said, that's not what I want. I want to know who they are. I'd probably pee my sheets if it hovered over my bed, or anything like that. I want to be sitting here at my desk and look up, and he's sitting over there on the sofa, over on the other side over there going, hey, Jin, you want to meet me? Let's talk. What do you need? Ask it the right way or I'll eat your soul, or whatever it might be. So I want to have that encounter. Why? Because I want to know things. But then the big question is this. In Christianity, what were we taught? The spirit world, the evil side, the anti-God side, they're deceivers. That Satan appears as an angel of light. And so on. And so that still is with me. I have to admit that and say, what is still with me? The fact that I was taught that anything that you learn that's counter to what you've been taught about the Bible, that's the deception of Satan.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Lucky has spoke on that plenty of times, and just what you said, because you can talk. And what did your family think of that?
My family, what? My family personally, or
no,
using that as a
Lucky Stone's family?
Oh, Lucky's family, yeah.
Yes.
My mother. Well, I actually had a dinner with my mother and my sister today, and I made it to my sister about it, and she paused and said, "You believe in this thing?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've been doing it for years since I was a little kid. I just don't talk about it too much." And she says, "Okay, yeah, our family does have that sense." And then she asked, because one of them happened to be with us, because he's with me all the time. And I was explaining that because I don't eat meat because he's asked me not to eat meat. So I got my food and I said, oh shit, there's bacon on it. And so I said, I'm sorry, I'll take it off. And she goes, are you just talking to someone in that chair? I'm like, yeah. I said, there's bacon. I didn't realize it. Oh, I apologize. And I cried. And she goes, what? I said, there's a little guy in the chair right there. He doesn't like me eat meat. I'm taking the bacon off. And that's when the whole story came. Yeah. So it is shocking that sometimes I admit to it. But
sure.
The problem with you talk to spirits, if you really want to talk to them, you've got to learn to listen.
That's it.
That's the biggest hurdle, is listening.
And that's the guard that I still have up. Now, like when we do ghost investigations, paranormal investigating, I don't see a lot. I experience the externals. I don't have that psychic ability. Do you know why? It's because I think innately, deep down inside, I have that fear of letting go of that control chip, if you will, that keeps me from having to delve too deeply into the unknown. I say, am I a hypocrite? Because I say, I want to know these things. But at the same time, it kind of it's a little nerve-wracking to say, I'm going to let go of my reason, what would seem to be my reason, in order to accept that message. Would I have years and years, decades ago, would I have known these things and had these encounters if I had let go back then? And I still have that to a certain degree. Why can I go into a ghost investigation in a dark, dank basement and the ghosts are in the back room? And I'm like, well, let's go check it out. And you walk right in. I have that bravado because I turn that off. Mm-hmm. So I don't have to worry about that. Mm-hmm. To put it more simply, if I turned that on, and allowed that communication, I probably get a lot more than I do. I might have had that encounter already. It's interesting on that topic that I put up. I don't know if either of you guys saw the pictures I put up a couple of years ago. I had a friend who was going to Egypt, and she had heard the story I had of what I thought was a vision. And I'm not given to those things, but I believe it was a vision I had at Saqqara, where the stepped pyramid is. And she said, we're going to Saqqara. And I said, well, I got some pictures. Let me show you. And I call them up on my computer screen, and I'm zooming in, and I say, now that right there, that's the rock I was sitting on. I took this picture 20 minutes later. That's where I was sitting, and I start scanning over to the right. I go, what the hell is that? Emerging from behind a broken wall was it? Now, Lucky, you may have heard this the story, but
I've seen it. Yeah, I've story. Yes.
The torso. You see the shoulder, the arm, the hand, the torso going down to the hip, fading off, coming from behind this wall. And I took other pictures while I was there. We were the only two guys there. There was nobody there, and certainly nobody black and shirtless in the Egyptian sun. We're wearing jackets. It was actually a little cool that day. And all the Egyptian guardians, they were wearing galabas. And so I look at that, and then you look at the dimensions from where that thing would have had to been standing. It would have been 9 feet tall. And so you look at that and you go, what did I capture there? Well, when I put those pictures up, I first discovered that a couple of years ago. And I put these pictures up, and I wrote about it. I said, what do you guys think of this? Here's this picture. And the picture itself at the time was 7 years old. I went back to 2013. And I said, I've looked at this picture 100 times, and I've never seen this until today. Why am I seeing this today? And what is this? And I had, within the next day, I had a good friend of mine, Sarah Soderlund, psychic Sarah, paranormal Sarah, we call her. She's also working on her PhD for her, she's a forensic psychologist as well. So she's got her shit together, in other words. And she calls me out of the blue, which she doesn't usually do. Scotty, what are you conjuring over there? I said, what? I'm not conjuring anything. Yes, you are. I said, what are you talking about? And I don't remember the whole course of the conversation, but it came out that there's something Egyptian, there's something ancient. And I said, well, I found this photo and I was talking about this. She goes, that's it. And so it's very interesting that can you start opening doors just by talking about something?
I want to agree with you very much. This is not to disrupt the subject, but to speak about it. Last week, I think I had Grandpa Brian on, and we talked about Reiki. Around the middle to the end of the show, something flew behind his head, around and onto the other side. There was no bug. And, it's wintertime. He's in the basement. There's nothing flying around. There's no bugs. And so I made a video of that, and I'm going to be putting that out tomorrow.
Nice.
It's really interesting. And I kind of blew it up so everybody can watch. It's kind of at the end of the video. So when it goes up tomorrow, You can listen to the video, but scroll to the end if you want and watch it over. I kind of blew it up so you can see the back of his head, and it zips on by and comes over to the side. That's the only time we've seen it. And
it's, how do you explain these things? How do I explain that shoulder and arm?
Yeah.
How do I explain, how do you explain something zipping by?
And it didn't just zip by like somebody shot it. It moved, and it made change of direction.
Sure.
So it was something intelligent.
And so the big question is, how do you know when something's contacting you, wants to talk to you, wants to get your attention? Ghost hunting, that's one thing. You start to, we kind of put that in another category. We go, you're hearing all this, you're experiencing this. Stop. We just stop and ask. You want to now? Whenever I have, I get stuff all the time. So does my wife. I always say my wife is a magnet to spirit activity, although she doesn't promote that in any way. Mm-hmm. She was, we were talking about the Reptilians when I was writing that book in 2012. Mm-hmm. My wife says, "Oh, I see them. They out in our backyard with the big oak trees and stuff." And she said, "I saw them outside our bedroom window." I'm like, "What? Why didn't you tell me this?" She goes, "Well, I didn't want you to think I was nuts." I said, "I already think that." And I said, "This is what we do. You got to tell me these things when they happen." And now she tells me whenever there's stuff around here. We're in a townhome right now with our 3 kids. There's stuff around here we see all the time. There's stuff that happens all the time. And now I've gotten into the habit of saying whenever I see something or hear something or see something, I'm always seeing stuff move out of the corners of my eyes. And I mean, guys, it's not just, oh, I saw something move out of the corner of my eye. It's all the time. It's like, I'm like, what the hell? And so I've gotten into the habit of right away, I'll go, "I'm right here. Do you want to talk to me? I am open. I'm an open book. I'll talk to you. Are you somebody? Am I just seeing things and my eyes have flecks in them? Am I seeing a flash of light from somewhere? Or are you trying to talk to me? Talk to me. I want to hear from you." And I had the one story, and this is just for effect. This is back when Rainey and I were just barely getting to know each other. We're talking 2005. And there was, suffice it to say, I had some friends who were witches, pagan, and they came and they did some pendulum readings in the house where I was living. And Rainey was there with me, and we got this being that actually gave a name. It spelled out a name from a girl I dated in high school. I'm 61 years old now. It's 2005. I was, however many, 7 years younger. And I was 44 or something like that. And I'm having this name come up from a girl that I dated when I was 16 and 17 and who was 25. And her name, the pendulum spells her name out, her full name. And so we get this, and I remember the next day, this friend of mine said, now, you can ask for clarity. You can call out to this person and so on. So the next day, I remember it was January of 2006. It was right after New Year's. Bright, crisp, if you know anything about Minnesota, bright, crisp, 20 below zero, but a beautiful blue cloudless sky. It looks like I could walk out in that and get a suntan, except it's frigid cold and there's snow all up and it's all white outside. And so much like your background, Lucky. And so the windows in my bedroom, bright sunshine coming in. And I had this big bedroom that was probably about 25 feet by 18 feet. And I had this big king size bed in the corner at a diagonal and wood floors. And so I remember standing there. This is where we had done the reading. And I said, Tammy, I said, if that's really you, And if you really want to get my attention, you can talk to me. Now, by the way, I was alone in the house, gorgeous Sunday afternoon, something like that. And I said, and immediately after I said that, right on the tail of my words, and the reason I described the bedroom was halfway between me and the bed, wood floor, I hear this big, just like that. And I'm like, kind of jumped and I said, that'll do. I said, if you want to give me a sign that you're here. And so that's what I did. And I went downstairs. My daughter's bedroom was down beneath mine. So I went down the stairs to see, okay, was it pipes? Was it ductwork? Was it nothing? Just a plain ceiling in their bedroom. And right where it sounded like somebody dropped a 5-pound mallet on the floor. And we had all kinds of things happen in that house. So when I asked for that attention, was it really the spirit of the girl that I knew? Was it somebody using that to get my attention? And they still wanted my attention. Who was that? I remember with the whole experience in Egypt when I had the vision and I got that picture. Before I even discovered that picture, Rocky and John Ward and I were going to do a little investigation of a house in Minneapolis. And on the way, Rocky's like, dude, you should probably, everybody, if y'all want to pray, and, call for protection. He says, I don't know what we're facing here tonight. So we're quiet in the car. And I call out to this being. When I had the vision, it was a year later, I was back there again, and Chris Conway was there with us. And he's a psychic from Scotland. And he came up with the whole event. And he says, yeah, you got somebody here and the name and the so on, and they won't give you their name. They won't give you their name until they know they can trust you. How's that for knowing the name of somebody? And, but Chris he says that he'll always be attached to you, not possessing you, attached to you, but only when you're in Egypt. When you leave Egypt, he says he's not leaving Egypt. So here I am, we're driving in this car down the interstate in Minnesota to go to South Minneapolis. And so we're all asking for a little protection. To quote John Ward, after we were done, Rocky says, yo, John, did you pray? He goes, yes, I summoned the demons of the Duat. And Rocky about jumped out of his skin. And John says, no, it's not what you think. But so I had prayed, and I actually called out to this individual that said that he would only be attached to me in Egypt. And in my head, I said, by the way, I don't know if anybody else gets this. I had like so much pressure right here. I don't know if there's anything about the third eye, but the brain, whatever part of the brain causes that, it was like, I could feel that. And I asked in my mind, I said, look, I'm calling out to you. I don't know your name. And it did give me its name, by the way. About a week later, I couldn't understand it. The name we got was crazy. I remember John Ward looked at me and Chris Conway, and he said, he gave you that name? He says, you shouldn't know that name. I said, well, what's the name? He said, I'm not saying. I said, well, he told me, I just don't know how to say it. And so I never did get the name, but it was Egyptian something. So I called out and I said, I don't know your name. You said that you would only be attached to me when I was in Egypt. And I said, do you have the ability? I said, I feel kind of silly. I said, I'm calling out to you, and I don't even know if you're there. Although when I was there in Egypt, I knew he was there. There were things that happened. And so I said, if you have the ability to hear me, do you have the ability to offer any protection for what we're doing from the negative, demonic, the evil, and so on? And I got to tell you, much like you see, if you can see the statue back here, the bust, it's got Senenmut and the young princess. And you see a lot of these Egyptian busts where the child is beneath the chin and the arms are wrapped around and so on. And while we're driving, I'm asking all of this, and I literally feel. It was so, God, guys, I don't know. And anybody in the audience that's listening, I was so inexperienced in anything other than the educational side and trying to figure these things out. I didn't know about the spiritual side. I didn't know what it felt like to be in actual contact or physical contact with something. And so what I felt literally was behind me, sitting in the car, the chin on the top of my head and arms wrap around me like this. Oof, it almost brings tears. That's what it does to me. It chills and tears. And it was like an unspoken, yeah, I'm here. I got you. We got this. Now, the most frustrating thing is not knowing who that really was. Was that my guy from Egypt?
Mm-hmm.
Was it somebody else stepping in, mimicking the guy from Egypt, trying to get my... But there was nothing else. There was nothing trying to lead me astray. It was just the feeling of, I got you. You're covered. Who was that? Was that my guy who said, I can't give you my name until I trust you?
That might have been your guy.
Might have been. So these are the things that I know we've drifted way afield of your topic.
Wait, but hey, it's your book. It's a great show. It's been going a long time, and I see we're dropping off. People are getting tired. It has been. It's been a great discussion. I love your stories, and I love this book. And I've just gotten the other book, which I just misplaced here. I just had that.
The Nephilim book?
The Nephilim
Rise
book.
and Fall of Nephilim?
I just got it. I put it up to the side, so I didn't get it messed up.
I got one here somewhere.
Anyway, I got it yesterday along with this one. Where did I put that? I got so many.
That's like me. When I'm doing a radio show and I go, oh, hey, I got this thing I want to show all you listeners. I'm like, it's been sitting here all week and now I can't find it.
How did I lose that? Yeah, I just had it. I just had it. It makes me so mad when I don't have it. Oh, okay. I am losing my mind.
By the way, I have a new book coming out.
Yes, The Sword in the Clay. Tell us
about if I can mention that.
Yes, tell us about
just
that.
Just in brief, has so nothing excited. To do.
I listened.
Has nothing to do with any of this stuff we just talked about.
Absolutely. I listened to the video today, and it was really good. I give you a thumbs up.
Oh, cool. Yes. Thank you. There was a friend of mine that came and said he works for a publisher, has a non-compete, and he says, I think you should write this little story as a kid's book. And it was the story of Will Bird. Will Bird was a Canadian Black Watch soldier, part of the 42nd Regiment out of Canada during World War I. Mm-hmm. And when he was in Amiens, France in 1917, after 100 days of bombing, German bombardment, he's walking through the trenches after the battle's over, and he finds a sword in the clay, the mud in the clay that's been churned up, and the sword is all corroded, of course. And he thought, what is this from? And it's just a hunk of metal that's all pockmarked and corroded and black. And he shoves it in his kit bag. And after the war, he brings it home. And he has experts take a look at it. And they say, this is a Roman gladius. And from the dating on this, it dates back to probably the Gallic Wars. It's about 2,050 years old. And for it to be in Amiens, France, it would have to date back to the Gallic Wars. Why would this gladius be in the clay, in the mud and the clay, that deep, and it's churned up by a bomb? And so he never knows to whom this sword belongs, just that it dates back to the time of Julius Caesar's Gallic Wars in the 50s BCE. And so that sword is today, it's still in the Halifax Military Museum with an exhibit for Richard or William Richard Byrd. After the war, he became a writer, and he wrote about 40 books and died in 1984 in his 90s. But this was his book that he wrote. And the title of it is, this is his Memoirs of the War. Ghosts Have Warm Hands. And this is a picture of he and his brother on the back cover. So this is the story I was given. Will Byrd found this sword. You should write a story about that, I was told. And as I'm researching and reading his book and so on, he had a couple of ghost stories that involved his brother, Steve, who had enlisted in 1914. 1915 was killed in battle, was blown to bits by a German mine in France. And so Will wasn't allowed to join up because he had broken teeth. He played hockey and he had what they called hockey teeth. And so he got his teeth fixed and they accepted him and he took his brother's place. He went back over and fought in the war. And it was almost 2 years later, he is sitting in the trench after laying barbed wire, and he feels, his book is entitled Ghosts Have Warm Hands. He's sleeping, exhausted, and somebody grabs his hand, a warm hand grabs his hand, starts pulling on him, then grabs his other hand, and these two hands pull him up to his feet, and he's in his stupor. He thinks it's one of his bunkmates or his platoon mates bunked out there in the trench, and he looks, and it's his brother Steve. And Steve in full uniform, and Steve says, "Get your gear, follow me." Starts walking. And Will's like, whoa, wait. And he grabs his gear. He's following him. They're going through the trenches where other guys are sleeping and everything. And what, looking out, and he sees him. He drops his gear accidentally, and he stoops to pick it up, and he throws it back on, and his brother's way ahead, veers off into a tunnel on the left. He follows him into the tunnel, can't find him anywhere. In exhaustion, leans up against the wall, his face against the muddy wall of the trench, and he falls asleep standing up. Somebody shakes him. "Dude, what are you doing here? Man, why are you here? What are you doing here?" And he's like, his reaction is like, what? And he says, "You're not supposed to be here. The trench you were sleeping in just got bombed a few minutes ago, and we're digging out all the body parts of everybody that was in there. Everybody's dead over there." And so he firmly believes his brother saved his life. Mm-hmm. So here's this story. And he had a vision of his brother early on when he was still working the wheat fields in Saskatchewan. His brother appears to him in the wheat fields. And he thinks he sees his brother in his uniform in the glint of the sun in the wheat field. And he brushes it off. The next day, he gets a telegram that his brother had been killed in battle. And so all of this is this story now of him finding this sword, his paranormal experiences. But what we don't know is to whom the sword belonged. So I created a fictional character to go along with that. So juxtaposed against the true story of Will Byrd and his ghost stories, I've got the story of Marius Abruzzo and his brothers who were fighting for Julius Caesar during the Gallic Wars. And it's actually the sword of Marius, of being fictional Marius. It's his sword. And so it's a plausible story, but I had to create one. So this is what the book became, and it's an illustrated book. So I did all these illustrations, and that book is now ready to come out. Our publisher is it's Manitou Free Traders Press, and he's funded other guys to do books. He's funded books for people, and we were really working at trying to convince him, you should start your own publishing house, to do a small publishing house to do these historical kinds of tales. And so he said, okay, he says, you guys put it together and let's see what we can do. And I told him, as part of the deal, I said, look, we could probably recoup your investment on this book. We'll throw up a Kickstarter, and maybe we can have a Kickstarter that will recoup your investment on the book, plus help fund the ongoing effort of what you want to do with these stories. And now the Kickstarter's not done. It'll be done and probably up by Monday, end of the weekend. So there's a Kickstarter for The Sword in the Clay, and it's where people can go in and just pre-order the book, And there'll be other things they can do too. If you want to put in money to help the company, you can do that. You can get these different, how a Kickstarter works, the different reward levels, all the way up to, signed art and prints and things like that. And so that's what we're just at the point where we're putting together. What do we offer everybody beyond just getting the book? Mm-hmm. And so we're putting that together. So that'll be up. But that's the new book. And that's it's not done through a publisher other than this friend of mine who funded me putting this book together. Is now we've got him forming this company, Manitou Free Traders Press. And there's no site to go see the book. If you're on my Facebook, you've seen it. It's out there. I've thrown up some of the pictures in the story. It's a short book. It's going to be a hardcover, about 8.5 by 11 hardcover. And it about 8,000 words. So where Reptilians is what, roughly 60,000 words, something like that. This is 8,000, gives you an idea of the difference in size.
But I tell you what, when you write a book like this book, I can just imagine in my head, I've listened to you enough. It sounds just, if you put your voice to the word, it sounds just like you talking. I kid you not, people. It's just like he's talking right now. You just put the voice there and you're going, oh my God, he's writing just like he's
I tried to get high and mighty when I was writing this, and I thought, no, I'm just going to write these things the way I would say it.
Yes, and they are.
And even my publisher came back and said, well, the editor wants to change that. I said, no, this is the way I want to express that. And so, so good. I'm glad you found it enjoyable.
It was. I can't wait to read the next book, but I know it's up on the if you've seen the shelf full of books, here, I'll give you a little view of my my menagerie here.
There it is.
Books.
Yeah.
Books. So everywhere. What a mess. But they're everywhere. And that's just here in this.
I can show you. If I turn this is my big computer screen, not just a camera. I got a light here. Hold on.
Yeah.
So I got a little bookshelf there. It's got it's got my lightsabers and my phasers and my little action figures and stuff like that. But then over here, you start seeing all through the corners, there's low bookshelves behind me, books over here.
Oh yeah.
Books over there, shelves going all the way down that. My library has become too extensive. So
hey, at least you got bookshelves with the books on them.
That's right.
I got a mess right now. But anyway, I love it. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your radio show that's coming back?
Sure. Intrepid Radio. I've been doing Intrepid Radio since when did we start Intrepid? We started Intrepid Radio in 2011 when we started Intrepid Magazine, which I don't publish anymore. I had been working for the Ghost Hunters from TV as the editor-in-chief of their magazine, TAP's paraMagazine. And then I left that outfit and I started Intrepid Magazine, then Intrepid Radio. And but prior to that, we were back in the year 2000, we were doing paranormal radio I was doing it with a guy, and they paid for the time on a station in Kansas. And so, there it is. There's Intrepid Magazine. There's not much left to that site. It's pretty stripped down, but that was the magazine. As a matter of fact, that was one of the last interviews I did right there. I'd interviewed Graham Hancock. I'd interviewed Vic Mignogna, who played Captain Kirk in the fan series of Star Trek Continue. You ever want to see a great...
that was great. I watched every episode and I taped it. It was awesome.
Vic Mignogna, his goal, he says, other guys, they sink their money into boats and cars and all of that. And he says, I sink it into building sets and creating this. And he created a series. They went down to even their lighting. They had lighting specialists so they could mimic the same lighting they used in the original series, the music, everything. And he even looks the part very well, plays the part very well. But that was Intrepid Mag.
Yeah, if you get a chance, if you're a Star Trek fan, go on YouTube, check out those shows.
It's called StarTrekContinues.com.
Yeah, and it's really, really professionally looking done. I mean,
it's fantastic.
Yes.
And now, as for my radio show, Intrepid Radio, I was doing the radio show with Odyssey Radio up until October. Then I just said, okay, I'm going on hiatus. I'm done. I had some things going on. I said, I got to step away from this for a while. And then Rocky Stucci and Ron Phillips, who do paranormal, abnormal realities, is their show. Mm-hmm. They're with Mojo 50, and so they now own Odyssey Radio. And Odyssey Radio, you go to Odyssey, and it's spelled a little differently, ODYSY. So odysseyradio.com, and their site's going to launch here pretty soon. They've got a skeletal form of it up. They want to do everything professionally and right and up there. You can hear my show every day. It's 9 p.m. Central, so 10 p.m. out east, 7 p.m. on the left coast. And they rebroadcast the next morning at 9 a.m. And so far, I've just got archives up. Don't let that throw you. This stuff is timeless. It would be like listening to this show 2 years from now. There's nothing that really dates it, unless we have, alien contact in the next year. But you get the idea. So you can go listen to that. There's also a Spreaker. I have a Spreaker page. And that is under where you can go listen to, if you missed the show, Spreaker. It's at Spreaker.com/show, the Intrepid Radio. I think all you have to do is look up the Intrepid Radio program, not show, program. And right now there's only 6 shows in there, but it's the 6th since we started doing the archives a week ago. So you can go in and you can listen to this whole series on the jinn. It is all over there on my Spreaker account. And so we'll be doing maybe another week of archives until we get all fully set up over there, and then we'll start doing regular shows again. So, and I'll be Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Central, 10 p.m. Eastern.
There you go. Good deal. By gosh, we'll be there. We'll be there.
Look at that. I can't even answer a simple question. It takes me an hour. I can say in 10,000 words what you can say in 10.
Pretty much, but we all enjoy it. But you know what? Next time I'm going to read the other book, the Nephilim. I've been really big on giants lately, and the Nephilim, and I'm going to be doing a book here with Isby, and we're going to be doing the last of the the king of the
the Rephaim.
Yeah, Rephaim. Yeah, getting it out of my tongue. I ain't so linguistic, but anyway, King Og, and Og. Yes, Og. And
now he was either a giant or he just had a big bed.
Yes, so. One or the other. But somewhere along the line, there's a big story to be told, and it's very interesting. And I hope everybody comes to listen. But we're doing a lot of stuff on giants pretty soon. So,
did you know that? Just on that topic, did you know that the whole David and Goliath story, Goliath being the giant, it talks about Goliath and his 3 brothers, that they were all Nephilim. It says they were remnant of the Nephilim. Well, and of course, the Bible says he was 6 cubits in a span. Now, a cubit was pretty much here. Now, it all depends on which guy is doing the measuring, I suppose. But 6 cubit in a span. There you go. There's a fanciful painting of it. 6 cubits in a span might have put him at about 8 to 9 feet tall. 9'2", I think I came up with. Then you add the big Philistine helmet on top. They have these tall feathered helmets. He's going to look very imposing. Now, people like to say it was giantism and all of this. No, it said he was a warrior from the days of his youth. He wasn't like a symbolic, we got this big giant, let's scare people with him. He was like a warrior. And so it was very interesting stuff about him.
But if he's that tall, if he's say 9 foot tall, and King David would be young kid, he could have been maybe 4.5, 5 foot tall.
Sure.
If that,
Now they say David was probably late teens, 19, 20, when this scene took place.
And people were small back then.
Yep.
He was probably around 5 foot, maybe 5'2", if that. Maybe I'm guessing. But
he was probably pretty imposing. What did the Bible record as Goliath saying to him? He says, "You come to me with sticks and stones." He says, "Come here, boy." He says, "And I'll feed your corpse to the fowls of the air." And then David, of course, gives us, "How dare you stand against Jehovah, the Most High of Israel?" And it's like, it's too flowery a speech. It was added. I did a whole series, by the way. I know we're going to end this, but I did a whole series maybe 3 years ago on Intrepid called King David, the true life story of an invented hero. And that I think David was a real guy. I don't think there's any reason to doubt that he was real. He was a clan chieftain in Judea that unified all these loose warring clans and for a short time. And yet his whole story in the books of Samuel in the Bible, reads like an apologetic, in that you're getting the story of David, but it's the polished story. It's the story that makes his enemies look worse and makes him look better than he really is. And the whole conclusion of the whole thing, it really came down to, if you were to meet the real King David, you probably wouldn't like the guy, even though the Bible refers to him as the sweet psalmist of Israel, the man after God's own heart, and so on. He probably wasn't a good.
I don't like bringing politics into it, but a Democrat.
Yeah. There you go.
There you go.
So he had a good biographer.
Yes.
So
yes. Absolutely.
See, now I just looked over here. Is this another one of those instances where I just get something over here just moved, and it's like I'm looking. There's nothing there that fell or moved. Something moved and made a big noise, and I'm sitting here and I look back there. Everything is as it was before. So those are the kinds of things we get around here all the time.
I didn't see anything on the camera, but I watch it. But anyhow. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
It's a little long before everybody goes home and goes to sleep, but
I think at 11:22, 12:22 is when you said to me, we should be wrapping this up now.
Yeah.
It's now 11:54.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's been a great show, and I could chop it up later and have little shorts.
There you go.
But anyway, thank
you
for
5
coming
days
on.
of shows.
Yeah, we'll do this again sometime. I hope.
Absolutely.
And I'll be watching you on your radio show coming up. So thank you,
all right,
everybody.
Fantastic. Thank you, brother. Thank you, Lucky.
Thank you, Lucky Stowe, for coming on, being my co-host. Thank you, Scotty. And we'll be the frequency you want to receive, everybody. Peace, everybody. There we go. And another